Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні. У нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt. Welcome back to the stream on day 287 of the news.
And of course, we're going to be reporting the past 48 hours of the war in Ukraine, both on day 286 and 287. But before we begin, we have a couple of special notes. Starting off with the Sunday night fundraiser. That last fundraiser was for World Central Kitchen, and we managed to raise $8.9 thousand, I believe, on the fundraiser. That number... And there we go. And that number may have actually risen after the last time I checked it, but in total, we have now raised, as a channel, as the Lee Spring Army, $667,000 in support of Ukraine. A massive amount, and I gotta say, it is all thanks to y'all once again. I know I went through these massive spills on Sunday night, and I'm not going to do them here again real quick, but I will make them incredibly short, because we have always managed to be an incredible force of good, a major fundraising power on YouTube, and I cannot think of any other channel, except for one, that has been able to do this much in support of Ukraine, and the only other one I'm thinking about is one of the largest on YouTube. And so, I've got to thank the Lee Spring Army once again, and if y'all are proud of that like I am, make sure to put a long live the LSA in the live chat, so that way we can all see what kind of energy the Lee Spring Army's got, and the spam will begin. Moving on into the most important news that we have gotten over the past 48 hours, it appears that the Ukrainians have started to up the ante, I guess you could say, and they've started to attack the Russian strategic bombers directly where they lie. And if we look at Google Maps, which is uncensored Russian military bases where we can see exactly what was at these bases before they were attacked, we can see here at the Saratov Air Base that they actually had a pretty sizable amount of Tu-95 strategic bombers and Tu-160s at the airfield before this missile attack even occurred. In fact, I believe, based off of the satellite imagery we had gotten before, that this Google Images satellite picture may have just been taken days before the missile attack occurred, which is actually kind of bizarre. Moving on up from Saratov and up towards the area of Ryazan, where the next airbase was attacked, we can also see that this airbase was packed to the brim with Tu-22M3 strategic bombers, one of the fastest strategic bombers in the world. It's more like a medium strategic bomber, but that's beyond the point. We can see that both of the air bases that the Ukrainians attacked deep inside of Russia housed a sizable portion of their strategic bomber fleets. And finally, the last one that was attacked in the Kursk area, if I can find that one right here, actually had an incredibly expensive and new addition to the Russian Air Force that's only been around for about a decade or a little bit longer. The venerable Su-34s, which are actually quite feared throughout the world, and one of the few aircraft that the Russians actually can boast and say is actually somewhat advanced. This frontline bomber, while carrying a small payload, has some of the most advanced avionics that the Russians can provide on their systems, and is somewhat comparable to early 4th-gen US aircraft. So, out of the entire arsenal, I'd actually say that while these are the smallest, they are one of the most expensive and maybe one of the most capable aircraft due to the way modern war works and how modern doctrine works. And of course, I haven't shown any video evidence yet, but I'm just trying to lead y'all up into the great payoff here in a second, as we're first going to go to Saratov, and we can see on security camera footage that there was a small attack on the airbase. And when I mean small, I actually mean that two Tu-95 bombers were completely knocked out in this attack. We can see the explosion right there, and with that bright flash of light, two Tu-95s were just brought out of action, each one costing around $45 million. Now we hear the car alarm going off, and with that car alarm going off, the Russians have now lost two irreplaceable strategic bombers. Good on them. We're now going to be moving on from the area of Saratov, where we saw those Tu-95s getting obliterated, and we're now going to be moving up into the area of Ryazan, where we actually saw a whole lot more information and picture evidence coming out of the damage that was caused here. Starting off, we can see the damage to the airbase, which was actually quite extensive. From this picture right here, and of course if y'all watched the video that I put out on Monday, y'all probably saw the complete rundown of what happened here, and we'll once again be running over it again, but you can see that the rear part of the aircraft, the elevators, and also it appears to be the tail gun, has been heavily damaged, and not only that, but this ZIL truck, funnily enough, it's not a UAZ or a KAMAZ, this time it's actually a ZIL fuel tanker truck, was obliterated, and from what we can tell, And from the initial reports that we've gotten from the Russians, 3 service crew members were killed and another 5 were wounded in this drone attack. Moving into the next bit of news from the Kursk airfield, we can once again see that the damage to the airbase was extensive. We can even see a before and after picture. The before picture of the Tu-22M3 on the runway, and the after picture where we can see a pretty large crater, a sizable piece of the wing missing almost all the way down to the wing root, and it looks like the elevator was also completely plastered as well. We can also see another picture here showing us the damage from another angle. We can see the damaged ZIL over there with the hood flipped up. And we can also see that both of the engines in this picture have been thoroughly destroyed. And so if this aircraft will ever fly again, it will not only need some incredibly expensive and highly rare turbine jet engines that this aircraft uses, it will also have to have a pretty much entire fuselage makeover to the rearward section of the aircraft to ever become airworthy. And once again, you see the UAZ picture right there, and a lot of y'all got a good laugh out of the organic coolant that's on the ground. We don't know if that's coolant from the vehicle or coolant from a person. All we know is that it's pretty bright. Anyways, we're going to be moving on into the last bit of news that we've gotten from the, let me make sure, the Ryazan airfield, if I'm correct. Yes, the Ryazan airfield, where we can once again see the pictures of the damage caused to the Tu-22M3. Now, moving on, before we get to this last bit of news in Ryazan that came out today that we were able to confirm, we're now going to be moving to Bryansk, where we also saw another drone attack, this time not targeted towards an airfield, but targeted towards a strategic oil reserve silo, where the drone then hit, exploded, and caught the silos on fire. And we can see that the fire is raging here in the distance from the cameraman. Fuel is crucially important. While the Russians are able to produce a massive amount of fuel, most of that fuel is produced in the far east of Russia in the areas of Siberia. And so this fuel takes a lot of effort and a lot of resources for the Russians to transport from Siberia in the far east over to the western side of Russia to be used in this current war. And so that fuel will be sorely missed. Moving on to the last bit of news, and probably the bit of news that is the most pressing today in terms of its relevance, is that not only did the Ukrainians attack the airbase at Ryazan and also Saratov, but they also attacked the one at Kursk. This wouldn't be the first time that Kursk has ever been associated with a disaster. Hence the Kursk nuclear submarine and also the Battle of Kursk. But we can see in these two pictures, first this one, which you actually saw in the thumbnail, of the burning fire at the airbase, we can actually see exactly where that is from this satellite footage. And if we go down to that area of the Kursk airfield and look at it, we can actually see a couple of interesting things. First, it appears that all of the parts and equipment needed to field these Su-34s are held in this one area of the airbase, and not only that, it appears that they have an Su-34 repair depot further back. And in this picture, all of that appears to be on fire. So they might have actually taken out a couple of Su-34s that we do not know about yet. Also, another interesting thing, looking at another picture from the distance, we can also see that the fire was only contained to that single area. And of course, while this is a short bit of film, we don't have any evidence to suggest that the fire spread outside of the, I guess you could say, storage units and also the repair depot. We can hear Robin Williams yelling, "Good morning, Vietnam." This is not Vietnam, however, and we can see the fire is burning quite nicely over there. It's nice to keep the Russian soldiers warm in this winter weather. And that's the end of the video, and now it's time to move on to some more interesting things. We actually saw that Russian air defenses around the Kursk area attempted to shoot down some of the drones, and since it says it right there, it's time to explain what kind of drones that the Ukrainians were using. A lot of people at the beginning, there was not a lot of news that came out yesterday when I made that video about what kind of drone it was, and I actually even saw, because I got the liberty of kind of roaming around on YouTube, that some people were insisting that it was not drones, which I found to be completely asinine, because how in the world do you get Ukrainian soldiers or special forces 400 miles inside of Russia to blow up stuff at airfields? That just doesn't seem logical. And it appears that it wasn't logical, because according to the Russian Ministry of Defense and some Ukrainian officials that have spoken about the matter, it seems as though the Ukrainians were using an ancient system. Something so old that the T-62M1 was a brand new tank when this thing entered service. We're talking about the Tupolev Tu-141. This thing right here is the drone that the Ukrainians used to fire 400 miles inside of Russia, 80 miles away from Moscow, and blow up multiple strategic bombers and also cause irreparable damage to Russia's strategic bomber fleet. It's honestly...
Dang, that's got to be a testament to the maintenance on that thing.
It honestly is, and we have no idea how the Russians didn't pick up this thing, first off, traveling almost 400 miles into Russia, and also how it even worked. From what the Ukrainians have told us, this thing was actually using an improvised warhead. All of them that have been used so far all had improvised warheads built into them, and were being launched into Russia with a lot of, I guess you could say, Ukrainian pixie dust on them, and praying that they would make it to the airfields, and somehow they did, and they actually caused a lot of damage. And so it's insane to think, because everyone thought initially it must have been something new from the West that we provided that we haven't told anyone about that was able to hit these airfields and destroy them. But no, this thing is so old, as a matter of fact, it almost looks like a V1 doodlebug that the Germans used in the Second World War. And somehow it was successful. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that bombshell, probably the craziest thing that's come out of the entire drone attack story, that the Russian Air Force is being obliterated by an old cruise missile. And we're now going to be moving on back to Kursk, where we saw that the Russians had actually been able to pick up a couple of them on radar and attempted to shoot them down, although from what we could tell, it was not successful in this video. But here is an interesting video of them trying to intercept these rockets, and for some reason, this has actually been changed in the label, because earlier it said that they were destroying incoming cruise missiles, Ukrainian cruise missiles, but now it's been changed to HIMARS. So with that in mind, I'm actually not going to show this video, because considering the new caption, it may be inaccurate. We may not be watching the Russians trying to engage the Tu-141 cruise missiles, so we're going to move on from this. But if you would like to watch it, make sure to go down to the description below and click on the map, because you can watch all of the links that we have on this map on your very own. All you have to do is click on that link, and it is right there for you. And so we're now going to be moving out of Russia, and from all of this wonderful news, because something that a lot of people have not been talking about is the kind of change that this is going to be making to the entire course of the war. Now, not only can the Russians not use Crimea, they also cannot use anything around the southwestern area as far as an airfield, unless if they are to heavily fortify it with surface-to-air missile defense systems, and pray that they're able to shoot down anything that's incoming towards these airfields, which is highly unlikely, considering that 3 air bases, well, actually 4 targets have been hit over 48 hours, and the Russians haven't been able to stop a single one. And so we may actually see that the Russians shift most of their aircraft either north in between Moscow and St. Petersburg, or further west towards the Ural Mountains, which may take a lot of Russia's Air Force, which has hardly been operational at this point, completely out of operation, because some of their aircraft will no longer be within range of Ukraine, or if they tried to be within range of Ukraine, they would have a very short loiter time before they had to turn around and go back to their air bases. That does not stand for strategic bombers, however. Strategic bombers could be launched pretty much as far away as Omsk and have enough fuel to still almost halfway circumnavigate the globe, so that wouldn't really affect them, but it will affect frontline bombers like the Su-34. This is huge news for Ukraine, and hopefully they'll be able to continue to use these incredibly dated, yet incredibly effective Tu-141s to hit the airfield, so that way the Russians will make the final decision, the nail in the coffin as far as their air support, the very little that's existed still, and they'll be moved almost entirely out of the theater. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of Russia, and we're now going to be moving into Ukraine, because something we saw interesting on day 286 was that the Ukrainians have a response now to cruise missiles. It's not an advanced Patriot missile defense system or a NASAMS. They're actually introducing an old system made in the 1970s by the Germans to counter the cruise missile threat around their country. Introducing the Gepard. Let me show y'all the video that Radio Free Europe made on them, and then I'll show you how effective it actually is in use.
Україна отримала від Німеччини близько 30 зенітних установок «Гепард». В першу чергу вони призначені для прикриття сухопутних військ на полі бою на висоті до 3 кілометрів і дальності 4 кілометри. Але в Україні ці зенітні танки виконують...
I hate to interrupt right here, Matthew, but for some reason, from this angle, doesn't the turret look like an insect? It's got like
really
little bug
does.
eyes in the mouth.
It's really unique looking.
Yeah, this thing is incredibly cool. But anyways, I'm going to let this guy continue.
...і інші бойові завдання, збивають російські крилаті ракети і дрони камікадзе.
Ми отримуємо приказ про те, що в нашій вірніше зоні відповідальності з'являється якийсь об'єкт. Незалежно від того, чи це безпілотник, чи це авіація. Видвигаємось швидко, дуже швидко видвигаємось на позицію. Ну, для нього, саме для цієї техніки, характерна саме така от площадь, де немає дерев, де немає поміг, тому що радар, який працює, він, в общем, поміхи создає. І таким чином ми сканіруємо область, в якій знаходимося.
That's a pretty cool look at the turret traversing from a GoPro on one of the guns.
Суть в тому, що
Man,
вона
the turret
комп'ютеризована
rotates fast
повністю
on that
апаратура.
thing.
Суть у тому, що вона комп'ютеризована повністю апаратура, і треба звикнути просто до того, як трусить вежу, як працює апаратура, як воно вводиться. Ось всі ці нюанси, тому що якщо трохи неправильно послідовність там приводити при виготовленні там на повну бойову або там при стрільбі, то вона може глючити і доведеться перезапускати. Це марнування часу.
Втрата часу.
Так само, наприклад, як на машину сідати перший раз в житті. Тобто, поначалу складно було, а потім це запам'ятається і легко. Тобто нам показували спочатку, інструктор залазив, показував, що означає воно, потім ми сідали, він ззаді нас був, інструктор з переводчиком, і це все він об'ясняв, переводчик мені переказував на нашу мову. Неділю нас
Man, they love spinning that turret around for
показували,
the
що
camera. It looks
воно
pretty cool, though.
обозначає, а потім через неділю ми сіли і почали їздити.
Много патронів не надо.
Is that sci-fi sound coming from the drone or from the tank?
It's coming from the tank. Isn't that cool?
That's weird. I thought it was like on loop in the music.
No, it's actually from the tank's turret and the guns operating. It's an incredibly cool tank, even for a tank from the 70s. Well, an anti-aircraft tank from the 70s. It is incredible.
Де безпілотники. Кожен ствол по 3 патрони і все, він упав.
Є у нас екіпаж, який збив відразу за один бойовий вихід, вони вразили 10 цілей. Це були шахіди на побережжі Чорного моря в Одесі. То як враження, як будто це створена техніка чисто для безпілотників.
Now, this video emphasizes how perfect this thing is against drones. But let me entertain y'all with another idea. How about we use this against cruise missiles, introducing the Gepard on the battlefield? Prepare to have your socks blown off by this thing, because this is unbelievable. What you're about to watch it do is shoot down a cruise missile in flight on its way to Kyiv. We hear it firing, and great balls of fire, it shot down the cruise missile. Look at that.
Єсть, бля, раді моя, гати, суку!
And this guy's gonna make sure to finish it off here in a second. And with that, that's the end of the video. But that is the Gepard anti-air tank. It is incredible how efficient it is in shooting down practically anything, whether it be a Shahed, whether it be a small drone, whether it be a hunking cruise missile traveling at nearly 500 miles an hour. It can take care of it all, and the Germans are continuing to send these. However, the Ukrainians are starting to run into a problem that the Swiss, the only country that still manufactures ammunition for the Gepard anti-aircraft tanks, states that they are banning the export of their anti-aircraft munitions to Ukraine, largely for the purposes of neutrality, which doesn't really make much sense considering that they haven't been neutral during the entirety of this war, but for some reason they're now wanting to exercise neutrality on actually sending arms and equipment to Ukraine instead of just helping them out through freezing Russian bank accounts inside of Switzerland. So kind of odd, but while the Ukrainians still have ammunition for these Gepards and however long they're able to have them around, they are doing an incredibly good job, as you can see right there, and hopefully we'll see more Gepards being introduced into the lines, so that way we can get more videos like this to talk and herald the success of this incredible anti-aircraft vehicle. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news that we also covered in yesterday's video on Monday, and we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns, which also are incredibly interesting. We had very few of them for day 286. Starting off with our first clipping, you see the Ukrainians dropping some bomblets. Here's the video. When you see the Russians walking, let me unmute this one because this one's actually kind of wild. So here's the video. When you see the Russians walking, and we see that the Ukrainians are going to give them an early retirement right there. And what was that, Matthew? Did you hear that?
Was that just like a delayed explosion?
That was the bomblet.
Wow, that was a really long time to pick that up.
No, it wasn't picked up from the drone, Matthew. That came from outside.
Wait, what?
These guys were using the drone just a couple of 100 yards away from them and dropped that bomblet on some Russians in the other tree line, and what you heard in that video was the sound of the explosion traveling over the field to them. That's how close they were.
Dang.
that is actually insane. So let's watch that one more time with that realization in mind. There goes the bomblet. Russians take naps to go on vacation, and there's the explosion. That is insane. We've never seen a drone being used that close to a Ukrainian infantry group before, or at least we never heard the audio to prove it. And this one's being used so close that it may as well be an actual frontline support weapon, not going miles behind the lines trying to find Russians, but literally dealing with Russians right in front of this Ukrainian squad, which is unbelievable. That's actually insane. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of location unknown news, where we can also see a BMP-3 after it's been javelined. St. Javelin has been around doing a lot of work, and one of the good pieces of work they've done is on this BMP-3, so let's check it out.
Короче, вот, Паскаль, пацанам, Джавелин прилетел.
You see that the BMP has had better days.
Все живы. Слава Богу, все живы.
We can also see the puncture to the top of the turret where the Javelin's explosive force blew through and knocked it out. And now we can see inside the BMP-3, and the damage is far worse than it looks like on the outside.
Сгорело все. Хана вообще. Короче, вот.
And with that, the video loops. But one thing that's incredibly interesting about this, and we rarely ever get to see Javelin damage wounds on vehicles, is how small the damage, the puncture to the top of the turret is. When a Javelin explodes, it looks like it's blowing up almost the whole tank, like the explosion is just enveloping the entire thing. But out of that massive explosion in a top-down attack mode, it only blows up in a hole that big into the tank. And that's all that's needed sometimes to cause turret tosses, ammunition explosions, and overpressure that kills the crew. And so it's unbelievable to think that the Javelin is so effective but only punches a hole inside of a tank that big. I guess you could say that that is a real... I don't even have a joke for that one, actually. I was trying to figure out a joke. But with that, we're now going to be moving on.
He was empty-handed.
Yeah, we're going to be moving on from day 286's news, and we're now going to be moving on into day 287's location unknowns, starting off with the first one, where we saw a Ukrainian BMP-2 firing at some Russians. And I bet y'all are going to enjoy this one. It's just fun. We got to mute the audio, though. And when you see Ukrainian sitting on the back of the BMP-2, when you see the BMP-2 looking into the distance, and now firing the 30mm gun. We don't know if the BMP-2 hit any of its targets in front of it, but hopefully it did, and it's also just really cool to see this autocannon working like that in such large bursts. Usually they're only used in one small burst about every 30 seconds. This guy was really laying into him. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of location unknown news, where we also saw that a Ukrainian soldier made a call from a very far away place. At the beginning of this war, a lot of people were faced with the decision whether they would let their family leave and stay behind, or whether they would try and run away with them and leave their country behind. Many Ukrainian soldiers, many Ukrainian men answered the call to go and serve into the military, and also largely they were forced into staying because martial law had been declared, and no one between the ages of 18, I believe, up till 35 or even 45 were allowed to go and just leave the country for no reason, because martial law had been declared and all able-bodied men had to stay and try and fight the war. And almost all Ukrainian men stood up for the call, but made sure that their families made it to safety and fled the country to neighboring NATO countries like Poland. This soldier's family is one of those instances. They were one of the ones to escape at the beginning of the war, and they are now living as refugees in another country. We're not exactly sure where, but on the first instance ever, from what we can tell, this Ukrainian soldier was able to call his family from hundreds of miles away on a front line, who knows where, fighting for their country, and was able to talk to him. And so with that, here's this very touching video of this soldier being able to call his family for the first time in many months. I gotta mute it here, but you can see that she's pretty happy. She's crying. A lot of emotions here, and I'm sure that the soldier has a lot of emotions, but sadly they've completely dubbed all of it over with music. And we see that even the mom's getting teared up now, and the daughter is just weeping. When you see the soldier here, he looks pretty happy to be on the phone. And with that, that's the end of the video, and I've got to give huge credit to all of the Ukrainian soldiers and all of the Ukrainian service members and citizens who have made sure to fight for their country and hold the line while also making sure that their families get to safety. These people are absolutely selfless and heroic on top of that. And they are doing everything they can in any little part they can, even if it's just an infantryman, to try and make sure that their homes don't get overrun by Russians and that the country doesn't become a puppet of the tyrannical Russians that are committing war crimes on people in occupied territory. And imagine what kind of war crimes would happen if a Russian puppet government was installed in Ukraine. It would be far worse than what we're seeing right now. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can also see some volunteers in action once more, and they were doing an incredibly good job. So, here's the video. And this one's a little bit of a lengthy one, but an incredibly interesting one at that. When you hear the fire bouncing right over their heads, we can now hear them returning fire. We now hear the Ukrainians laying down fire with a machine gun. Some pretty long bursts. We can now hear some fire returning and bouncing off the ground in the tree line in front of them. We now see them getting low. You hear the rounds popping off the ground right in front of them again. And the fire is actually pretty accurate onto this Ukrainian position. It sounds like it's popping off the ground just yards away from our cameraman. We now hear the Ukrainian machine gunner laying down those thick and heavy bursts again.
The artillery.
We now hear one of the volunteers talking about bringing in some artillery.
The BTR is.
I'm gonna be out soon, boys.
Hey, we're running low. All right. Keep this up much longer. Mike. Yeah. What's coming down the road?
They're fucking throwing them over my head.
They're staying behind that second tree line.
We now hear artillery flying overhead. We have not heard it explode yet. It sounds like it exploded far behind him, almost a quarter mile behind him.
We're gonna send a runner. So we need a runner to go get him.
We need ordnance out here. Levy, how do you feel about running?
We can see that at this moment, the volunteer is trying to find a runner. The reason that they need a runner is apparently that the radio communication systems have broken down and they no longer have any contact with their surrounding parts of their squad or units nearby. And so they need to find a runner to do the dangerous job of running in between unit to unit and relaying messages in between them. And so you can see that a decent amount of them appear to be somewhat reluctant to take on the job of runner, but understand that it is an incredibly dangerous job. And in World War I, one of the units, well, I guess you could say one of the positions on the front line that had the highest casualties was that of a runner.
It's gonna take me a while, just sit there. Sit there.
Давайте разъебем их нахуй. Пожалуйста, арты дайте, блядь.
Yeah.
Это идеальная мишень для арты, давайте.
All right, let me go check it out.
And now it seems that our cameraman's going to be the runner.
They're going back.
They're going back?
Yes. Wait, Bjorn, don't close yourself.
I'm going to the fucking bunker to go get more ammo, man.
This guy got tired of it. He's like, dude,
oh, man.
Listen to that again. You can just hear like how annoyed he is. He's like, dude.
Wait, Bjorn, don't close yourself.
I'm going to the fucking bunker to go get more ammo, man.
Why does it sound like they're playing a video game, like in COD or something? I'm trying to reload, man.
Dude, I'm trying to cover, man, but you aren't helping me.
Hey, I'm pretty sure that bunker's back behind us. It's up there?
We now hear the Ukrainian machine gun once again ripping on the Russians. You now see this, the cameraman also firing off his gun as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I told you I'm going to that fucking bunker, right?
Man, they're having some like issues cooperating in this little unit.
No, it sounds like everyone's gotten confused at this point, that he's gotten up and he's trying to relay the message as a runner to the other unit, but at the same time they've all realized that the Russian unit is now falling back and disengaging from the fight, and so there's no need to have a runner go to another unit and tell them what's going on and get them involved. And so everyone keeps on with the mindset that this guy is trying to run to the other unit, and they're all trying to stop him from doing that, but he's just trying to get to the bunker to go grab more ammo, and so they're all almost getting into cussing battles with each other because of a big misunderstanding. Gotta love Americans, though.
RPG, 240, anything?
Yes. Whoa. Yeah.
We now see him finally getting that coveted ammo that he's been trying to get for the past 2 minutes while fighting with everyone.
Hey, can you bring that up here?
We now see him asking, I guess, an ammo runner from the basement, trying to bring up more stuff.
1, 2, 3.
Two.
That's exactly what this man is. Down in the bunker, or the basement more like, they have a man down there that's filling up all of the ammo cases and also passing ammo up.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
He has now finally found the ammo after fighting his entire unit to just get up and go grab it, and now he's making the trek back to his position.
What?
They're about to light this place up. They're about to light this up, bro.
What did that literally sound, Matthew? Like someone playing a game. They're about to light it up, bro. Why in the world is it that Americans talk in video games just like they do in real life? That's really bizarre. Anyways, we're gonna let the video continue.
All right, take this goddamn 240.
Now see him passing on some of the ammunition for the
God fucking damn.
M240.
I don't know what that is. It might be 240. It might not. Not? All right, well, all the other 240 cans were empty.
They might have filled it.
All right.
They're gonna light us up, bro.
I wonder what the Ukrainians think about the American volunteers. Like, do they think they're more competent or less competent?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I wonder.
All right. I don't know, man. I don't know. Just breathe and walk through it. That looks like a clip. It's a hinge that should lift up.
Good.
All right. We heard you. All right, hey, Les. Take me to the guys on the side of the road.
You want to read the tank?
Everyone's ripping on this guy. They're like, he's so polite. He must be Canadian.
Dave, keep them there. Keep them fucking.
And that's the end of the video. We've heard that he's now going into another lengthy cussing bout. But, of course, it's nice to see that the American volunteers did engage the Russian forces and apparently gave them enough sustained fire to keep their heads down and also force them into a retreat away from that part of the front line and back into another position to probably try and attack a weaker area. However, being honest, it does appear that the American volunteers, at least in this clip, are a lot more disorganized than the British volunteers that we saw the other day, on Sunday, when we saw them get engaged in a firefight, which is a little bit interesting to see. There's many reasons why that may be the case. For example, some of these may have actually been volunteers with no combat experience, and now they're having to deal with the rigors of war. In case of y'all didn't know, at the beginning of the war, you didn't have to have combat experience to get a frontline position in the Foreign Legion, and many of those people may still be there. But nowadays, they actually require that you have some kind of combat experience and can prove it. So very interesting to see, but all in all, it doesn't really matter how much bickering goes on. As long as they're able to get the job done, they're doing a good job, and we can see that they did that here and forced the Russian unit to disengage, and finally got that ammo from that freaking bunker. And so that's the end of that video, and we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can also hear some more foreign volunteers, and I think, Matthew, you and me are both going to recognize the accent that this one guy's got on him.
Oh, damn, boy.
I think that was a
Roll
house next to
Tide.
us.
Roll Tide!
Yeah, there was a house behind us.
Maybe. Possibly. I think we would have got more rubble. But possibly.
Fucking cocksuckers, man.
Keep your mouths open. This is not a free-for-all. This is my morale that I packed from home. Okay, all right? I'm establishing it now. Got it?
What's up, pups?
Oh, yes, I suppose you can sit there.
There's an Alabamian somewhere in the darkness. We heard him before.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Motherfucker.
That guy's definitely not from Alabama.
No,
It's
he's
Paulton.
not from Alabama.
No.
That is a bad idea.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but I had to make sure to include this one because we could hear a little bit, a tiny bit of Alabamian in there. And if there's any Alabamian on the front line, I gotta put them on this show. And so with that, that's the end of this video. And while we didn't get to actually confirm the guys from Alabama, that accent is almost a 1 in 5 chance of him being from Alabama, or he's from Georgia. One or the other, I would assume. And so with that, that's the end of the video. But once again, you see that the foreign volunteers are doing a pretty good job of keeping the morale together. I mean, they literally just had an artillery shell land right on top of their heads, and they're all just like, good golly. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next and last bit of Location Unknown News, which is the Russian casualty report. I know you've all been waiting for it. I have too. So let's take a look into it, and let's see what we got. So, starting off at the very top, we can see that the amount of casualties they've been taking in terms of troops is still quite high. They're still taking around 500 a day, and now the number of total fatalities they've taken is 92,200. Of course, this is all an estimate, but it is probably fairly close. And 92,200 soldiers killed is getting incredibly high. In fact, that is almost about 40% of their initial invasion force dead outright. The rest of them have probably been wounded, and the entire original invasion force has probably been replaced at this point by either green soldiers who have not been involved in the war or the conscripts that they brought forward during the partial mobilization. We've also seen that another 5 armored personnel carriers have been destroyed, 8 supply trucks, 5 tanks, an artillery piece, 5 drones, 61 cruise missiles. That was, of course, over the last night when the Russians once again barraged Ukraine with a massive amount of cruise missiles. They were able to get 61 of them, I believe, out of 70 or 80. The cruise missile bombardment was about the same size as the one that occurred on Sunday. And, of course, no planes, no helicopters, no anti-aircraft, no special equipment, and no new boats. But they still did cause a decent amount of damage to Russian frontline forces, like we saw with the armored personnel carriers and tanks being knocked out, as well as the troops killed. These numbers are once again starting to climb up a little bit more, and while the Russians are not involving their armored personnel carriers and tank forces as much as they used to, we can see that those casualties are beginning to climb again on a daily average, and that may show that Bakhmut is once again turning to be incredibly costly for the Russians to make almost no gain in ground each and every day. And once again, if y'all haven't already watched that video, go watch the video on this channel about why Bakhmut will probably never fall, and that explains why the Bakhmut area and the entire Bakhmut front is practically unwinnable by the Russians just due to the terrain layout and who controls what land. But moving on from this, I guess you could say, casualty report, it is starting to show that the Russians are still taking casualties and they'll probably never take Bakhmut, which is also an incredibly major part of today's news. In fact, it is what we're about to move into next. And so...
Now, Enforcer, real quick, I got a question for you, as I saw multiple people asking about it. How come the aircraft were +0 when the bombers got destroyed?
Those bombers may have been accounted for in yesterday's casualty report, considering that happened on day 286, and we do not have that one up. And also, the aircraft casualties that may have happened today may be included in tomorrow's casualty report, because usually with aircraft and helicopters, the Kyiv Independent and also the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense counts those the day after they occurred. And so while we know that some of them were destroyed today, we'll probably see those numbers reflected in the report tomorrow.
Aha. Well, that might explain it then.
Yeah. And also another thing, I think they may be a little bit reluctant to count the Tu-22s destroyed or damaged at Ryazan as kills, because those may actually be salvageable or repairable. You have to remember that a Tu-22 M3 is an incredibly massive aircraft, and while we saw that it had taken a pretty significant amount of damage, if you look at the amount of damage it took versus the size of the aircraft, and also, I guess you could say, its overall appearance, you can see that it was really only the small rearward area of the aircraft at the end of both engines and also the end of the elevators that took any damage. It appears that the rest of the aircraft may have been fine. And so the Russians, if we're looking at a reasonable repair schedule and turnaround time, it may be just a matter of a month, and that aircraft may be back in rotation again at the Ryazan Air Force Base, ready to be used in the current war. And so I don't think they'll be counting those as kills, but they will count the 2 Tu-95s as kills, because from what we've been told, we haven't been able to get official picture and video evidence of it, but we have been able to get reports from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, which apparently did have a special force unit in the Saratov area, which I guess you could say triangulated and coordinated the missile attacks onto the airfield. 2 Tu-95s were destroyed there, but we haven't got any pictures to confirm that. We've only gotten Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reports on it. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the Bakhmut area after going into that. Very good question, by the way, that everyone asked. And we're now going to be moving to, I guess you could say, the furthest north that we've ever included in the Bakhmut area, which is right outside of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. But before we do that, I've seen that Matthew's been running some very interesting polls during the previous news segment, and I want to make sure we cover that, because a lot of y'all vote on that, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are interested in what everyone else is thinking. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, and real quick, just a fast note. We are actually only going to be doing one question segment during the news, and now we're going to be doing all the questions at the end. So there will now be a total of 6 polls throughout the stream. There will be 3 in the beginning that we'll address right now, and then there will be 3 more that we address at the very end. So with that being said, let's jump into our first poll, and it said, do you think the Ukrainian drone attacks on Russia will provoke serious consequences from Putin? It looks like 45% said yes, bad consequences are likely, 23% said not sure, and 33% said no, the Russians won't do anything. So, with that being said, let me try to get that text off my screen there. So I would have to say that I think I'm not really sure, to be totally honest, because I think the Russians attacked the power grid again yesterday or today. I'm not sure about that. Enforcer will have to let me know. But if that was the case, that might be the worst that they're going to do about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that there's really no way for the Russians to retaliate against this or add anything extra. Some people have been saying that the Russians retaliated by attacking the Ukrainian power grid, but that's not the case, considering that that has been going on for nearly a month and a half at this point, with wave upon wave of Russian cruise missile attacks being levied against Ukraine's electrical infrastructure and largely already knocking out most of it. Kyiv has been largely without power for about the past month, and also Kharkiv and other cities like Lviv, from what we've been told, have also been without power for weeks or even a month and a half in some instances. And so from going off of that, we know that the current attacks against the electrical grid aren't necessarily, I guess you could say, retaliatory strikes for what's happened inside of Russia. I would say that that's continuing their campaign to make sure that the Ukrainian electrical grid stays knocked out once they were able to achieve that about a month ago. And so going off of that, I think there's really nothing that the Russians could do additionally to retaliate off of what's happened in the southwestern area of Moscow with all of their air bases and also fuel silos being hit. Also, on top of that, it seems as though there's a little bit, it seems, and I didn't cover this a lot earlier, that there's a massive lack of air defense in the entirety of Russia for an old antiquated Tu-141 drone to fly 400 miles into Russia and just 80 miles away from Moscow and hit its target seems to be pretty insane, actually. In fact, well, you can actually see a picture of one being prepared to launch right here. It actually has the Ukrainian Trident and roundels on it, because they've actually been refitting and using these since 2014. It's insane to think that it actually worked. Who would have ever thought that a cruise missile that was introduced into service in 1974 would be able to fly, and just going over Russian airspace, we don't even know where it was launched from inside of Ukraine, 315 miles from the closest part of the Ukrainian border to that airfield and actually hit it. I mean, like, hell, that's not even that much of a stretch to go to Moscow. It's only 10 miles further from the closest point on the border, which is insane, and it shows that they may not have air defenses inside of Russia at all, because they never expected, in their incompetence, for the Ukrainians to ever fire into Russia. And so I don't really think there's a lot that they could do offensively. I think what they're going to have to be doing is immediately trying to catch up and react to what the Ukrainians have done and start to build air defense systems, or prepare air defense systems to protect the southwestern area of Russia. Otherwise, the Ukrainians will be once again entirely unopposed in destroying strategic bombers, frontline bombers, and also fighter aircraft that are based all throughout the southern area and are being used to fight against Ukraine, or very rarely to fight against Ukraine. And so honestly, I don't think they're going to be doing much. We also saw that they didn't do a lot at the Kerch Bridge either. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the second one says, will the receiving of several more German Gepards be game-changing for Ukraine's war effort? It looks like 74% said yes, they will be huge. 14% said not sure, and 11% said no, they will not be a big deal. So, like I say on all the new equipment that Ukraine receives, anything they get, to me, is a big deal. They need everything they can get. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that this thing is incredible for the Ukrainians to get, and I think that it's definitely going to be a game changer, because while it's a little bit of an older system, this thing is almost perfect in countering any kinds of cruise missiles and also any kind of drones that the Russians have been using so far. The Gepard's guns don't just fire shells. Like, if you think about a 30-06 bullet, which I'll show y'all here real quick, it is just a solid piece of lead. And that's pretty much what a large amount of AA guns in Ukraine have been using, like the Shoka. Largely, it seems that they're using solid projectiles, and they're just hoping that it hits the drone and takes it out. And so we've seen that, apparently, according to Ukraine, the Shokas have almost been useless against countering drones. However, I believe they're 35mm Orlikon guns, and let me make sure if they are. Yeah, they are 35mm Orlikon autocannons. These things actually have proximity fuse rounds, which means that when these things fire, once they get a certain distance from anything, they explode. And so these rounds could fly anywhere in between, I believe it's like several yards. I don't know the exact fuse on these rounds. And let me see if we can find something on that. Let's see here. Variants, operational history. We want to find the information about the rounds themselves. Let's see, KDA, dual felt, yeah, cool. Okay, so Unlimited mode gives a continuous fire time of 35 seconds before running out of ammo. Standard fire 24 rounds. Let's see here. What the hell is not going to give me any answers about the proximity fuse on them? However, we're moving on from that. We don't have the exact information, the exact numbers to crunch on the proximity fuse on these things. However, it is far enough that when these things explode, even if they are a little bit away from the target, they're still able to usually take it down. And so this is a massive upgrade for the Ukrainians in their air defense, because due to it being a proximity fuse round that the Gepard uses, it can take down cruise missiles with ease, it can take down Shahed 136s with ease, it can even take down smaller drones with ease, considering that once it gets within proximity of something, it just automatically explodes. And so with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well, because I think that if any air defense system is going to be a game changer that we'll practically see in Ukraine, it is definitely this one. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and for the final poll of the first question segment, it says, considering the stressful situation, is the communication breakdown understandable that we saw in that video with the American volunteer? So it looks like 74% said yes, it is understandable, 9% said not sure, and 16% said no, they need to fix the issue. Now on this one, I want to preface it by saying that it's very admirable that volunteers go and fight in Ukraine. They don't have to be there, but they choose to go there to fight for the cause. So I don't want to be too harsh on the guy, but I think they need to fix that communication issue, because that could end up getting somebody killed. But that's just my take. So on this one, I'm going to have to diverge from the majority and go with the 16%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, rather than them getting a little bit frustrated with each other, everything largely went fine. If it wasn't for them sounding like they were frustrated and getting in a back and forth with each other, and everyone thinking that he was going to be a runner when he was just trying to get ammo, it wouldn't have been that big of a problem. So I feel like it's okay, but one thing that is important is to make sure that there's always radio communication in between all of the units. Because, of course, if you don't have that kind of communication, you could start to devolve into the situation that the Russians had during their war in 2008 and 2009 with Georgia, where a lot of their units had to start using landlines to try and connect to other units and their headquarters and tell them what was going on. And so I would have to say, out of, I guess you could say, all of the options, I think it would be a lot better for them to fix the communication problem, make sure they have proper functioning radios, instead of having to try and eventually get a runner. Because if they have to get a runner, and that guy runs off and then he gets shot, then they have to go find another runner to try and send that message, and time is being spent that could be used to move a unit into position and actually help out. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, the poll fairly well, and with that, I hope we answered that one pretty good too. And so with that, let's get on into the questions.
All right, and first up from our super chats, we have a very generous $50 donation from Felix the Fat, whose username still cracks me up a little bit. That is Felix the Cat, but backwards. And Felix says, coffee fund for you, and also a tribute to all others in the chat. Always a generous and formidable community.
And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, thank you for giving a huge shout out to the Lee Spring Army as well. The Lee Spring Army is truly incredible. And I'd love to know that this is what our channel has been able to do, is gather up such a great group of people that have been able to help out Ukraine in so many ways. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support and the high praise to this channel and the Lee Spring Army as well. And also, if we can get a Lee Spring Army in the chat for that, I would be heavily appreciative. And so thank you so much once again, Felix the Fat, for the support. That is pretty funny, actually, that he changed it from Felix the Cat to Felix the Fat. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep alive thanks to you. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from another channel legend, Santiago Flores, who says, good Taco Tuesday, and for the Pizza Fund, have you checked eBay out? They are selling Russian captured or picked up souvenirs. Cheers.
Really? Actually, let me check that out on a second screen. And let me see if we can get that up here right now, because some of y'all might actually find some interesting stuff. So, Russian... Oh, hang on. Nope. It's a good thing I showed that off screen, because otherwise it would have shown all of my emails. So, Russian military surplus. Let's see what's under there. Oh, look at that! This is neat. All right, so we got the coat that the prisoners were wearing. We got some shush helmets. We've got.
They can take that Z patch and just throw it in the landfill. I don't think anybody's gonna pay $15 for that.
Actually, I think I would buy a couple of them for kindling for fires. Although that's still a little too expensive. I think 50 cents would be more appropriate. Some Ushankas. some jackets didn't come from the current war, and the Budanovka didn't come from the war either. A gas mask that, you know, probably a lot of people are going to start joking on here in a minute. But all in all, some of this looks like it was not taken during this war. Some of it looks like it was. But pretty interesting nonetheless. I'll have to try and look into this a little bit more off stream and see if there is some cool stuff that we could find that's been taken off of some soldiers during this war. And so with that, I hope that answers that comment fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running, and also allowing us to take a look at eBay and all of the exquisite offerings they have there on the kind of military surplus and souvenirs we might get. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, so that way we can keep on running these streams, keep on making the videos that we're making, you know, that are now popping up in a large amount, and also helping to run the fundraisers as well. And so with that, we are on to the final question, and then we'll be moving on into the Bakhmut area.
All right, and the final question goes to BC Skyman, another channel legend, who puts in a $20 donation, and he gives an update on Roy. He says they have been ordered to hold the line, and most of his men are already going back home. They have taken more casualties in 3 weeks than in 3 months of the war, because drones can easily see with no tree cover.
And I thank you so much for the support, BC Scammon, and also sharing that story about Roy. And I would have to say that that is probably largely true. A lot of the foliage in most places have now disappeared, and also in some parts of the front line, snow has not taken the place of the foliage, and so you can easily see a lot of soldiers, I guess you could say, that you wouldn't have been able to during the earlier months of the war, like in the summertime. That's actually quite unfortunate to hear. Hopefully, they are able to hold the line wherever he is. Hopefully, wherever he is, he's having some fairly decent luck keeping himself taken care of. And I thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. You've been around forever helping this channel to keep on running, and also sharing a little bit of a story on Roy, who's actually a family member of BC Skyman's that's currently fighting inside of Ukraine. And so, if everyone could, wish the best of luck to Roy, because Roy is one of the people that we actually know of that is over there and helping out in the Ukraine war, actually fighting on the front lines. And so make sure everyone to say, good job, Roy, and let BC Skyman know that we all appreciate the family members he's got who are helping the Ukrainian war and helping to fight in a war that they have to, that really the entire world is obligated to make sure the Ukrainians win. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, BC Skyman. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're now going to be moving out of the question segment, and we're now going to be moving out of the Northeastern news segment as well, considering that that front line has been completely stagnant from what we can tell, and nothing is happening there. However, in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, we did see that the Russian army is doing frontline things, to say the least. So here's the video. Y'all are not going to believe what they're doing. They're trying to steal an entire bathtub. Somehow they got that out of a house.
I don't even want to know why they're still in the bathtub.
I don't even want to know why either.
It's surely not to take a bath, is it?
I mean, you know, they probably stink, but how are they going to use it? Like, there's no way to use that. I think they're actually trying to steal that and somehow have that sent home. I don't even know. I really don't know. But it's just the weirdest thing to see. And look at them waddle with it. It's so heavy that both of them are giving themselves hernias trying to get that thing across this muddy field. This is so dumb.
So what's that bathtub made out of? Straight up like a rock?
Lead. It's made of lead.
Yeah.
And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the furthest northern part of the frontline news. And I guess you could say, well, I can't make a toilet joke because it's a bathtub. I was going to say that was pretty crappy. But anyways, we're going to be moving on into the next part of the front lines near Spurne, where we saw that a Russian T-80BV drew the short straw, to say the least. So here's the video. We can see the SBU showing off the T-80BV that they're about to take out, and we can now see that it's taking a hit directly to its engine bay. It continues to roll on, although it is starting to slow down a little bit. We can see a fire's broken out on the left rear side of the tank as well. We now see the crew has bailed out.
They are taking off.
They are running. It's a marathon. They almost left the third guy behind. And they're all on their merry way out of the front line, away from the tank, and they've left it behind to burn out. We can now see that apparently the crew might also be getting hit by a mortar fire. make their day even more fun. We can now see the tank is getting enveloped in thick black smoke, and the tank will be living out its last moments here on this road. The final journey of the T-80BV. A good job on those tankers, too. They were very smart. Once the tank got hit, they knew it was a lost cause, and they just ran away, hopefully right into the arms of Ukrainian soldiers that they'll surrender to. With that, that's the end of that video, and once again, nice to see that the Ukrainians are making sure that the casualty reports have an extra +1 in the tank category. Moving down to the area of Soledar, we also saw that the Ukrainian soldiers are doing good, quite good actually, in this area of the front line. You see them looking out into the open near the Soledar area. And you see that the front line has been absolutely devastated, of course, like we mentioned earlier, and artillery is still exploding in the distance. What the world? Did that just fly right in front of the door? Oh my lord, it did!
It did!
Oh my god! They were.
It's the Wile E. Coyote one.
I think that was a tank shell. What in the world? Because you see it exploded down there. It came in at kind of a shallow angle. I think that was a Russian tank that was firing down that road, and they were just in the house and they just watched it fly by. It just went shoo, just straight down the road. But it's good to know that they didn't get hurt. Hopefully no one further down the road got hurt as well. And that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like in the Soledar area. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of news, a little bit further down the front line and in the Bakhmut area itself, where we saw that the Ukrainians were lighting up one of the hills. We're assuming that this may be the hill to the southwest, with a healthy amount of artillery. And so let me rewind this so that y'all can see this from the very start. That's quite a nice barrage right there. I don't think anything's getting through that one.
Very healthy.
Of course, I say that, and then a lot of people will make it through it because artillery doesn't get everyone that it lands around. But with that, that's the end of the video, and you can see that the Ukrainians are certainly saturating the areas that the Russians are in with a large amount of artillery, so that way they will hopefully either take some losses or their nerves will be shattered for the next day of fighting. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of news we've gotten from Bakhmut, where we can see a soldier looking out of a building in the town of Bakhmut, apparently, and into the distance beyond. And so here's the video.
Бахмут – це тепер маленький Новосибірськ. От другий етаж, там на горизонті підари. А тут жили люди. Жили люди, ми вибираємо собі спостерігачку.
See him showing off the building that they're in. It's been heavily damaged.
От як жили люди. Доволі таки хорошо жили, все. У них була кімната відпочинку, зайці, тігри.
We also see some children's toys in the corner.
Вон, потолки красиві, люстри, все. А тепер тут, блядь, осколки і піздець повний. А все чого?
It was actually a really nice house before the war.
На горбу сидять йобані кацапи. Тут живуть куча долбойобів, які їх звали. І от хлоп, от як виглядає будиночок. Таке.
With that, that's the end of the video, but once again, giving you a pretty good look of what the Bakhmut area is like, and also giving a little bit of a glimpse of the lives that were lived there before the war. As you can see, the children's toys in the corner, a family was living in that house, and then had to pick up and just leave everything behind to make sure that they didn't end up in harm's way. With that, we're now moving on from that little bit of news, and once again showing the condition around Bakhmut proper, and we're now going to be moving down to the last bit of news we have as part of the Bakhmut front line, where we saw some Ukrainian soldiers getting engaged in a firefight further south, and we're supposing in the Kurtimivka area. Here's the video. We see Ukrainian soldiers moving forward. Looks like this guy's got an M4. We see them looking down the road, pointing at something in the distance, and now turning around and firing directly behind them and lighting up whatever is back there. They're now running further down the road. We can now see that they've made it to another position, and the footage was cut in between there and then. It looks like they're now picking up some AT-4s, And they're running with these down the way, under a tree. Now firing the AT-4 into the distance. I do not think that's an M4. I think that's another kind of rifle. And now moving along, some fires coming in and bouncing off the ground around them. Now see him firing some rounds over the top of this berm. We have not heard them take receiving fire in that area, or return fire, I guess you could say. I'm kind of mixed. I feel like that's an M4, but I feel like it may be a variant of the M4 as well. You now see them moving along past a stockade with some tractors inside of it, down what appears to be an open path, so they may be on some farm fields in the area. We now hear some rounds bouncing off the ground and flying right over them. They're now moving behind some of the houses that they found for cover. The rest of the units moving up with them. I cannot tell if that was return fire or if they were getting shot at. Didn't really tell. Continuing to move, it looks like they're moving towards the village. Now climbing through some wire. It looks like it may be electrical wire, or electric fence wire, more likely. Now climbing through some thick brush. They've now made it into a village. Sounds like they're still taking fire. We don't know from where.
Куда переходим? Переходим, да?
You now see them moving down a pretty large valley. Sounds like they're still taking fire. You now see him turning around and coming back up for a second. Now he's continuing to run back down again when you hear fire coming in and bouncing off the ground right around the cameraman. He's now gotten to the bottom of the valley. Now I see this guy messing with a scope. We hear fire coming in still from the distance. Now they're still moving down another road in the same village, apparently on the other side of the valley.
Давай быстрее.
This man,
and these guys' running endurance is being tested to the extreme.
I was actually about to say, these guys are now competing for first place in the U.S. Army PT qualifying competition. But with that, that's the end of the video, and it's pretty nice to see that these guys were able to book it when in a pretty tough situation. They were able to get their job done, they were able to fire at some Russian forces that they found, and also get out of there, from what we can tell, without taking any casualties, which is, of course, a massive plus. And with that, that's the only firefight we got video footage of occurring on the entirety of the Bakhmut line, but now it's time to explain what we've been seeing going on here. over the past 24 hours, the Russians have made a landfall amount of ground. I'm actually very concerned about it because we go to the Bakhmut area near the chicken tender and everyone loves that. I actually saw a lot of people saying, oh my god, can you stop saying that so many times? I don't know what else to call it, like the hill. There's 6 hills around Bakhmut, so this one is also the most important one, so I have to call it the chicken tender so that way people know which one it is. But moving over the past 24 hours from the 4th to the 5th, oh my goodness. They've taken another 150 yards of ground. Oh, Lord. The Ukrainians are finished. It looks like they also took another small building leading into the, I guess you could say, the major road into Bakhmut from the east. But beyond that, they haven't taken any other ground on the entirety of the front line. If we go down south near Andriivka and Kurtamivka, we can see that over the past 24 hours, absolutely nothing has changed. And further north, in between Bakhmutske and Krasnohora, we saw that nothing has also changed here as well. Most likely because the Wagner group got obliterated on Sunday, the last time we covered this news. And once again, it appears that nothing of note is really occurring in this area, rather than the Russians taking an incredibly small amount of ground, about 100 to 125 yards. They have still not taken the chicken tender, and until they take that hill, there will be no kind of progress occurring in this area. If they even do take the hill, they'll then have to, I guess you could say, deal with the massive amounts of fire that they'll be taking from the ridgelines to the west of Bakhmut, which will probably either suppress them on that hill and they won't be able to move further, or it will push them back off the hill with a very strong Ukrainian counterattack, retaking it. As long as the Ukrainians hold that hill, as long as they hold the chicken tender, the Russians really have no ability to move their forces further west towards Krasnohora or further into the town of Bakhmut itself, considering that the Ukrainians will control the high ground, dictating who moves freely through those two areas. And so with that, once again, the Bakhmut line appears to be pretty stagnant. It appears that the Ukrainians are still holding their ground quite well, and the Russians may never take this town just due to how defensible it is for the Ukrainians with the terrain surrounding it. With that, we're now going to be moving on from the Bakhmut front line, and we're going to be moving a little bit further south towards the area of Marinka, where we saw that the devastation in Marinka has once again been incredibly bad. Marinka has been a front line ever since pretty much 2014, and especially since the beginning of 2022, and the damage is definitely starting to take its toll. And so, here's the video. I have to mute it because they're playing some kind of crazy rock music over it, but every single building in this town has been completely destroyed. With that, that's the end of the video, but once again, giving you a quick little glimpse of what the front lines are looking like in the Donetsk area, and I have to give a massive credit to the soldiers that are continuously holding these front lines and dealing with the vicious barrages and bombardments that are turning this battlefield into that condition, but it has not changed the morale of the Ukrainian soldiers whatsoever. With that, we're now moving out of the Donetsk region, of course, stagnant as always, and we're now moving to the southern front, where we have seen a couple of interesting things. Starting off north of Volodar, we saw that the 54th Brigade were firing at an incredibly rare Russian vehicle, and were also able to take it out, thus, like the caption saying, making the vehicle even more rare. Here's the video. Of course, you can hear some pretty good music, and now you can see the artillery rounds coming down almost right on top of it. The Russians have apparently left it to its fate. And we can see that it's a rare gas-armored car. Something that we haven't seen a lot. Usually the Russians use a Tiger armored car. Here, they're using a UAZ, which is just incredibly rare. There's not a lot of them. And now we can see that there's one less of them. That looked like a direct hit, and I'm not really sure. It looks like it may have landed just in front of the vehicle. It didn't hit directly onto it. But now we can see that the Ukrainians are also going to get a double whammy. They're also going to get a Ural 4320 with it. That shell landed right on top of the car. That one went through the roof. It looks like the back doors have also blown open from the force of the explosion, and now we can see that little UAZ burning. You know, Matthew, I wonder if the Russian soldiers, whenever they see a guy who isn't really pulling his weight in a unit, if they say, UAZ.
UAZ?
Yeah, like you lazy, UAZ.
Oh, maybe so.
And so that, let's look at the fire. The weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And that thing's gone, for certain. The Ural, however, looks to have been moderately damaged, but it didn't catch on fire. And also, you can see some more Russian vehicles further back on the road that We don't know whether they've been abandoned or what, but they haven't moved as far as we could tell every time we saw them. And of course, hours passed in between some of these clips because you can see the sun setting in the distance. With that, that's the end of that video. And once again, nice to see that the casualties are being inflicted at every part of the front line. With that, we're now going to be moving into the area of Yekharivka, and we saw a very special story from this area of special forces rescuing some Ukrainian POWs behind the lines. And so with that, here's the video.
Омега, я паук. Вижу людей. Вижу людей. Наши идут. Наши люди идут. Внимание всем.
Now see them moving down the road.
Наконец-то. Наконец-то. Героям слава. Героям слава.
You now see that they've grabbed the POWs. And did I say that these guys were Ukrainian POWs? I'm sorry, I actually meant that they're now Ukrainian POWs, but they're actually Russian soldiers that have called in a little phone call to 1-800-I-WANNA-LIVE, and they're now being turned over to the Ukrainian Angels unit, which is now taking them as prisoners. Sorry if there was any misunderstanding earlier, because I think I misspoke. When you see that they're blurring them out so that way the Russians can't, you know, I guess you could say treat them poorly later. I mean, actually hear that the prisoners are saying Slava Ukraini. Interesting. We now see them burning some clothes. Probably because it's got lice in it.
Как-то не очень. Чувствую себя мишенью.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but very interesting to see the 1-800-I-WANNA-LIVE line is actually being used a pretty decent amount, it appears, and we can see an instance of that right here on the southern front, right where a major battle was occurring about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And so with that, we're now moving on to the next part of the front line near Huilopol, or as Stewie from Family Guy would say, Kuhwip, or Huilopol. And we can see that the Ukrainians were able to knock out another T-80 in this area. We're going to mute that. And we see right there a Russian vehicle in the tree line firing some kind of gun. Actually, sorry, correction. Blessed me. I actually got that very wrong. That's actually a BTR-4. A Ukrainian BTR-4, and it's firing into the distance. We can now see the Russian T-80 right there, covered in soldiers. Soldiers make a very effective armor. They add about an extra millimeter worth of protection to a tank, which is quite a lot, especially for the Russians. They need every extra millimeter. I now see it moving down the road. Unbeknownst to it, it is about to become the the prey of a BTR-4.
The Russian T-80 continues to drive down the road, unaware of the troubles that it will soon face. With its young on board, it continues to drive, completely oblivious to the dangers that lie underneath. The BTR-4 is now sizing up a delicious snack. It is absolutely hungry and will now feast upon the rear end of this T-80. We can now see that the young have been flung from its mother, crying and whining as they may. The few younglings that still survive are trying to run, and the head of the vicious beast is now spinning in circles.
It's an exorcism.
The sense truly being blown out of it.
Is there somebody controlling it, or is it just out of control?
I believe it is out of control, and we can now watch as the young run from their now stricken mother. These younglings will go hungry.
Oh well, I actually didn't know that was in there, but
moving on, we can we can see some fiery explosions as the body now combusts. Ash to ash and dust to dust. I would hate to see how the BTR-4 eats its meal, considering how it was able to take out its prey. Delicious. We can now see the Predator right there at the end of the freaking video, and they cut it off right there. But that's the end of the video, and nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to claim another kill on a T-80 BV. Also, I hope y'all enjoyed that voice. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip, and we're going to be moving further down the lines to the last bit of news we have in the entirety of the Southern Front, where we saw that a Russian vehicle was destroyed by the 11th Separate Guards Assault Brigade. Quite a lengthy name, but their actions speak a lot more than the long name of their unit. So here's the video.
Коли вибивали звідси, вони вже так, знаєте, є такі відео, де їх розривало на шматочки, вони вже не могли йти звідси.
Of course, we have to mute it. We see the Russians, of course, in their dugouts. Now I feel like I have to do a David Attenborough voice for this one too, man, because I was like, that was a perfect intro.
We now see the Russians in their dugouts. We can now see the Russians getting vaporized into a fine slushy mist.
You see a destroyed, what appeared to be a enlarged MTLB. You now see them showing...
Nice and trashy like usual.
Yeah, and I think that was actually the dugout that was hit by the tank. So I think that some of this... Yes, some of that was left over unintentionally, you know what I mean? Organic coolant and all that.
Oh.
Oh, you don't say.
My Attenborough impression is pitiful.
The Russians have, of course, left behind their trademark signature. Organic coolant, sanguine in color, and stretching across the ground like the veins that once it coursed through.
We now see the Ukrainian soldier giving us a little bit of exposition to what's been happening on this part of the front line. I stuttered like I had no idea what I was saying. We now once again see the Russian dugout. We can also see, I don't even know what kind of car that is, but it is covered in Z's.
Why does it look like an old Cadillac or something?
That's what I was thinking. It
Z's
looked
on
like
the
a
side of it.
1990s Cadillac. Oh, man. Honestly, I could see Morty, you know, like Jerry's dad in Seinfeld saying, "Oh, Ma, you bought me a Cadillac?" Oh, man. Anyways, we can see another destroyed out bunker, I guess you could say, of the Russians. It's interesting how in the final days we saw them collecting their items. They had personal items there, mattresses, rucksacks. They were barely moving around due to the constant fire from tanks, mortars. And nearby, in the forest area, 2 tigers arrived and ate them. 9 people came out and went here on foot. As they walked, I would say, quite relaxed, but with backpacks and guns. They came here, stood for 15 minutes, and sat down to relax, took off helmets and vests. That was about 15 minutes of their combat actions. Oh, we
got like photographic memory.
Yeah, we hot fired here a bit from a tank. They flew in pieces. That's how they fought in this position for maybe 15 minutes, in pieces. 2 dead for sure, 1 wounded with a rip-off arm, whom I saw. And we see the position again and the video of it. That man recounted that story in an interesting way, actually. He got the detail down exactly. They had a lot of vehicles here, and 2 BMPs behind me in the field. We moved them out. They came along this forest area. 2 were burned nearby, more further. We burned approximately 11 BMPs in 4 months here. 11 vehicles in 3 square kilometers. Dang, that's actually a lot. And civilian vehicles. Here in Ivanivka and in other territories, they took a lot of civilian cars to fly on them. Fly on them? Oh, we can see one destroyed right there. We burned a lot, and they dumped them too after blowing up, as the guys mined a lot here. At the start, they felt like at a resort. They were taking showers, sunbathed. In a nearby forest area, we burned a BMP. They hid there like rats. But the next day, I flew and saw they found an inflatable circle and sunbathed near the burned BMP. It was like a resort, but not for all. Not all were sunbathing later. Then they go to a clip of one of them.
And then they saw the sun.
And then they really sunbathed in the light and awe of an artillery shell.
We now see the damage that was caused to that specific spot. They stole washing machines. They're so-called souvenirs. There are many videos of us starting shelling, shells landing here. A civilian car would come up, pick them up, and leave. That took fractions of a second. They managed to get out in between our shots. They were lucky. At this junction, I was curious observing the life of animals, as I would call them. Damn! Oh my god! They killed a cow on the field, chopped it, carried legs, chopped meat. Well, they needed to eat, and the area had a lot of animals. They caught and grilled them, but we also grilled them. Oh my god!
I like how this guy's like just sort of like standing here like reminiscing, like he's just an old storyteller or something.
Yeah, but what kind of super Chad line was that? Oh my god. Read this again, Matthew. They caught and grilled them, but we also grilled them. Oh my lord.
Charbroiled.
This man is dropping bars out here. What's up with the buried car? The buried car behind the trees, they took the car as a cover. I covered it with earth. That car is covered with earth. It was used as defense. A lot of cars. They brought a lot of cars. It was their frontal position. 60th Brigade there. The 17th here. We shelled them well. Why do you think the Russian paratroopers were here? If they are considered the elite of Russian forces, does that mean it's an important direction? Paratroopers are mobile. They quickly entered. There's no good road here, but further there is a road. They quickly moved through our territory and dug in the Kherson area. I think their objective was to take the Kherson area, so they held it. Maybe they expected assistance from other forces. So that's why paratroopers were here. It was strategically important. Kherson, Dnipro, and such an important place as Kryvyi Rih, maybe they waited for assistance. When did you personally find out the paratroopers were here? Did someone tell you? For me, this year started, I've been taking part since 2014. Defended various cities. I need a hobby of photography. I had a drone. Uh-oh, I know where this is going. And when I came to the brigade, when it all started on the 24th of February, I approached the commander, told him I had a drone and I could get involved with air reconnaissance. And we were one of the first to find out they established here. We flew from Mala Shestirna and we launched from a pool there. And I saw reflections of vehicles. Upon flying closer, we saw the vehicles. We found out they were paratroopers from locals. People started fleeing. We saw Talinashka's BMP, BRDM, indicative of paratroopers. BRDMs are very indicative of that. So that's why we started beating them. They fought back too, but we gave them a light. You can see them driving by one of the obliterated MTLPs. And while they were grilling cows, we grilled them. With that, that's the end of the video. But I gotta say, that was actually a very interesting insight into the mindset of soldiers in the area and how they're looking at the war, and also what happened there. Also, I got this a little bit mixed up. It said border of Dnipro and Kherson Oblast, and so this was about the closest I could get with it making sense. Apparently, they were talking about in this direction over here on the Kherson River Reservoir, and so we're actually going to move that over here. And pretty interesting to hear that Ukrainian soldiers are cranking more jokes than I am. Which is actually pretty crazy. And also, they were pretty good ones, too. I liked them. And so with that, that's the end of the Kherson news, actually. We actually moved from the Zaporizhia front line to the Kherson area. And with that, we haven't heard of any other frontline news in this area. But now it's time to move off the front lines and start showing y'all some even more interesting things that have occurred elsewhere in the country. For example, Putin drove a Mercedes across the Kerch Bridge on day 286. Now, you know, some of my keen-eyed viewers have actually talked to me on Discord about this video and found it quite interesting. First, the thing I found interesting is that Putin just got done telling everyone to buy Russian, yet he's driving a German car. The second thing that's kind of bizarre about this is that this Mercedes... Hang on. Actually, no, I'm correct. It's a push start. That, for some reason, it looks like it was an actual turn start car with, like, a key that you pushed in and then you turned it to start the car. But that's just where you put the key. Also, what's up with that red tag on it?
Don't get it wrong, though. This is a really old Mercedes. This is not anywhere near new.
How old do we think this Mercedes is?
Probably like 2009 or earlier.
Oh, that is old. And it does kind of look old. That vent looks old. And it's interesting, they're not showing us the damaged segment of the Kerch Bridge. They're just trying to show us the okay parts, but that's not the part that matters. It's about the damaged part. Also, we never actually got hardcore proof he was driving on the bridge. All we saw him was driving a car. We never saw him on the bridge. But with that, that's the end of the video. And once again, an interesting look at the kind of propaganda the Russians are trying to make these days. With them driving a German car, yet telling everyone to buy Russian. Curious. With that...
I see some folks saying it's a rental.
I think it is a rental. I think it's like a Ty Lopez thing, you know, where you like rented the Lamborghinis and stuff. I think he's doing the exact same thing. Anyways, it's now time for us to move on up into the area of Kropnivisty? I'm going to get that town wrong no matter what. Anyways, we can see a cruise missile flew over this town just yesterday, and hopefully the Ukrainian air defenses were able to shoot it down. Chances are they were able to later on, but we didn't see it in this clip. So here's the video. See it flying over right there and on into the distance. And once again, the Russians trying to attack Ukrainian civilians and kill off as many as they can, however they can, and however expensive it becomes. With that, we're about to be moving back up to Kyiv, not for the speech from President Zelensky this time, but for something I found incredibly interesting and something that I thought was important to show. A lot of Russians say that the Maidan, I guess you say the Revolution of Dignity or the Maidan-head riots, as they're sometimes called, were backed by the West and was really just a coup that the West had paid to happen inside of Ukraine and to overthrow the pro-Russian government and throw in a pro-European Union one. This has largely become, to some people, what has actually happened, and a large reason why some people are pro-Russian, thinking that the West would do something similar to that. And what's actually interesting is that I got some footage today that I found very important to share with all of you all to show that that wasn't the case. And if you look at what actually happened during the Revolution of Dignity, you'll see that it wasn't just a small group of people. It wasn't a Western-backed group of folks and higher up in the government that overthrew the pro-Russian government and tried to bring in a pro-EU one. It was the entirety of Ukraine. And if you look at this video right here, you'll see that as far as the eye can see, stretching out into the horizon, masses of people organized in the Maidan, which is the center of Kyiv. You can actually see it if we zoom out from Kursk and move over here to Kyiv itself. I'll show you all the Maidan. It is... Let's see, it's somewhere over here. I'm trying to find it real quick for y'all. I believe it's actually right here. Nope, that's the Princess Olga monument. We're trying to find the Maidan. Let me just type it in. It's over here somewhere. It's just skipping me a little bit. Right there. I literally just moved right over it. This is the Maidan, and this is where the riots got their name. This is also where it all began in 2013 and 2014. And so here's a video of what really started this war, and to show you that it wasn't just something that was Western backed, as the Russians would try and make you believe. It was something that was literally spearheaded by the people of Ukraine. And so here's the video.
Слава Україні! Шановне товариство, брати і сестри українці, нині влада нас зрадила. Янукович зрадив не тільки тим, що протягом 3,5 років його режим принижував нас в національному плані. Не тільки тому, що його режим позбавляв нас громадянських прав, знищив соціальну справедливість, зруйнував українську економіку. Сьогодні вони впали на коліна перед Путіним, перед Кремлем і стають Україну в Москві. Ми допустимо цього! Ми хочемо таєшний союз! Ми українці, європейська нація, і ми будемо боротися за наше майбутнє. А Україна це! Україна це! Україна це! Сьогодні не тільки вони десь там про щось домовилися в Сочі. До речі, ми вимагаємо Майданом негайно оприлюднити, що ж то за таємні переговори, який наслідок тих перемовин Путіна і Януковича. Українська нація повинна знати про це. Не можна, не дозволено за спинами народу про щось домовлятися від імені народу. Вони нас тягнуть знову ж таки в репресії, часи сталінізму, а й зрештою теперішня банда тут організовує сталінізм. Хіба не так? Ви подивіться, що вони роблять, ці негідники. Заарештовують людей безправно, а при арешті людям мішки на голови напихають. Що то таке? То що в 37-й рік люди пропадають безвісті, і ми до цього часу не знаємо, де з десяток людей, активістів Майдану, ділися. Вони порушують всі процедури щодо затриманих наших активістів. Це значить до виконання усіх наших вимог. Правильно! Наші вимоги чіткі, покарати нелюдів в погонах, які били наших дітей, які били тут Майдан в крові. Так! До перемоги це значить всіх випустити політичних в'язнів Майдану. Так! До перемоги це значить відставка уряду Азірова. Так! До перемоги це значить перевертач зарплати, нові вибори президента і парламенту. Так! До перемоги це значить підписання асоціації з Європою. Так! Оце і є перемога. І тільки тоді ми вступимося звідси. Бо в нас революція, товариство. У нас з вами революція гідності. Революція! Революція! Гідності! Революція! Гідності! Революція! Гідності! Слава Україні!
And with that, that's the end of the video. But once again, giving you a real idea of where this all actually began and why the Ukrainians have been such a tough fighting group and a crack group of fighting soldiers. These people have been fighting to actually have their own say and their own determination in their country ever since 2014 and 2013, like you can see right here in Maidan Square. And so with that, it's now time for us to move on to the last bit of news we have to cover tonight. And of course, it's the one that probably many of y'all have been waiting and looking for. Without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 287 of the war in Ukraine.
Панове генерали, офіцери, сержанти, солдати, дорогі українці, шановні присутні. Сьогодні день нашої вдячності. Саме такий сенс у 6 грудня, і це назавжди. Тепер лише так наші люди відзначатимуть День Збройних сил України словами вдячності, відчуттям вдячності, сльозами вдячності. Я впевнений, мільйони разів сьогодні в Україні прозвучало або просто подумалось саме так. Дякую. Дякую воїнам нашої армії і усім формуванням Сил оборони України. Дякую батькам наших воїнів, які виховали дійсно переможців, саме так, переможців. Дякую всім лікарям, медичним сестричкам, які рятують поранених героїв. Дякую кожному, хто зміцнює оборону і забезпечує українських воїнів усім необхідним. Коли в державі День Збройних сил, за своїм сенсом є святом вдячності, таку державу, я впевнений, неможливо здолати, неможливо зламати. І сьогодні ми всі це точно бачимо і це ще раз побачили. Шановні присутні, 8 років і вже 286 днів Збройні Сили України боронять нашу прекрасну державу від окупанта, від російської агресії. Тисячі українців віддали своє життя, щоб настав той день, коли на нашій землі не залишиться жодного окупанта і коли всі наші люди знов будуть вільними. Я прошу вас зараз вшанувати хвилиною мовчання пам'ять кожної, хто загинув на полях бою заради нашої держави, заради України, чиє життя стало частиною героїчної історії сміливості України. Дорогі українці, сьогодні для мене честь провести весь день разом з нашими захисниками і нашими захисницями. Вранці ми були на Донеччині. Я подякував бійцям, які боронять нашу державу на найбільш сьогодні небезпечних і відповідальних напрямках. Тим, хто б'ється на Сватівському, Бахмутському, Авдіївському та інших напрямках в Донецькій і Луганській областях. Вручив воїнам держави нагороди, відзнаки. Я був сьогодні на Харківщині, подякував нашим лікарям, які рятують наших незламних бійців. На Харківщині я вручив нагороди бійцям, які брали участь у звільненні регіону, які продовжують виганяти окупантів з України. Сьогодні нам вдалося повернути додому ще 60 воїнів, які були в російському полоні. Ми продовжуємо повертати наших і звільнимо усіх. І зараз тут, в Маріїнському палаці, наші герої, рідні наших воїнів, командири, представники бойових бригад, підрозділів, які щойно прибули з фронту і знову повертаються на передову, там, де дійсно гаряче, там, де дійсно вони борються за нашу свободу, за нашу незалежність, за наших дітей. Я хочу сказати усім присутнім саме те, що сьогодні у серці впевнений кожного українця. Я дякую вам, я дякую усім солдатам, абсолютно усім матросам, усім сержантам, старшинам, усім офіцерам, усім шановним генералам і обов'язково усім татам, усім мамам вашим, наші шановні, поважні українські воїни. Я бажаю усім вам одного – перемоги. Всім нам. Ви заслуговуєте. Весь наш народ заслуговує. Всі наші батьки, наші діти заслуговують. Наша держава і історія заслуговує нарешті отримати перемогу. Слава Збройним силам України! Слава Україні!
With that, That is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 287 of the war, and that also wraps up our news segment for the night. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit that like button, comment on this once it becomes a video, and subscribe as well. It helps this channel to keep on growing, and it helps us to make sure that we are able to keep going so that way we can keep running Sunday fundraisers and also keep on reporting on what's going on. And so with that, thank you all to every single one of you all so much once again. We're about to be moving into the question segment where we're going to answer everyone's questions, everyone's super chats, and we're going to answer as many live chats as we can. But before we get to all of that, it's time for us to get into our polls. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, folks, so let's jump right into these polls. We have two to address, and the first one said, reports indicate a major Russian bank had a massive cyber attack today. Do you think Ukraine did it? It's a pretty evenly split poll, shockingly. It looks like 28% said yes, Ukraine is likely responsible, 31% said no, it was likely someone else, and 41% said not sure. Now, for me, I think it was likely someone else. It could have been an independent hacking group. For example, I saw many people saying it could have been anonymous, and that is certainly an option. But I'll have to go with the 31%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I'm not really sure. I would have to also fall within that category because I don't know if it would have been Ukraine. I don't know if it would have been someone else. There's a lot of people who would really want to hack a Russian bank account. It's not like it has a lot of money in it, but you could still at least chip away at it or just mess with them a little bit. So it could have been anyone from the West. It could have been Ukraine. It could have even been the Chinese. The Chinese just try and mess with everyone in that regard. And many other countries do as well. So I would have to fall within that 30% as well and say I'm kind of undecided. So with that, I hope that addresses that one fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says, based on available footage, are Ukrainian military soldiers in good physical condition? It looks like an overwhelming 87% said yes, they are very conditioned, 11% said not sure, and only 3% said no, they appear to be lacking. Now, to me, I'm going to say they are very conditioned. It looks like in that one video we were watching that they have really good endurance when it comes to running. So, Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, yeah, they got good endurance when it comes to running. Those guys ran at least 1.25 miles, and they were still going. And that honestly is a lot more than I can do. Like, hell, I get tired just looking at that, and I bet a lot of y'all do too. So I would say that they're in tip-top physical shape. And so with that, I hope we addressed that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll, so we are now moving on to our super chat questions, and then we will address our live chat questions. And first up, we have a $20 super chat from NorCal Socks, who says, this is a standalone video idea. With Wagner recruiting thousands of convicts, to fight in Ukraine, can you do a deep dive into penal units of history, especially modern day? It could be very interesting.
That would actually be a really interesting idea, NorCal Socks, and I think I will probably see about making that a video here soon. However, one thing I have noticed is that YouTube does not promote any of my videos that I make outside of the Ukraine war as much as they do the Ukraine war videos, which is kind of sad because the video I made today on the B-21 Raider at this point, let me actually go check on it real quick and let me tell y'all how it's done. It has done 9.4 thousand views over the course of 8 hours, which is pretty bad. It's actually really bad. So I would love to make a video like that. I will make one tomorrow on that. It's just that I hate that YouTube doesn't even promote it to my own subscribers about that content. Also, apparently it got a low click-through rate, which means that the thumbnail must have just been crappy and the title must have been crappy as well, which may have led it to have a low viewership. But still, it was kind of sad on that one. It's also been sad on the Chinese ones as well because they didn't get a lot of views. And yet they allowed a massive load of views for the Ukraine war videos because apparently now they've slotted me into that specific category of information. If it's not Ukraine war information coming from this channel, they're not going to promote it. So with that, but I will still do one on that because that is an interesting topic about penal units. Most of them come from Russia, but of course there's many other examples the world over of things similar to penal units. And so with that, if y'all would like, make sure to go check out those videos and also leave a like on them and also a comment because it helps out a lot and it helps the channel, the videos, and everything we do to reach even further. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, NorCal Sucks, but to give a quick answer as to whether I will do that video, I will. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I'm sure some of you are wondering when my next video is coming out. my final exams are actually going to be over on Thursday. So I'm still trying to wrap everything up and make sure that I get that done and don't screw that up. So on Friday, I'm going to start making the video, and I'm eyeing a Monday night premiere release. So hopefully that works out. I have a pretty good topic. I don't want to spoil it, but I think it's going to be pretty good. And up next for our super chats, we have a $20 donation from Panama Floyd. And sorry, Panama, I'm having a very hard time with words right now. But Panama says, need y'all who know Morse to translate every night. I was never an amateur radio guy, just a shortwave radio listener back when it was still a thing before the internet.
And thank you so much for the support, Panama Floyd. And sadly, we don't even know Morse code all that well either. I actually use a Morse code translator machine to make that Morse code message every night. But that is actually pretty cool to hear that you were into shortwave radio. That's something that I believe these days, Matthew, is really regulated.
You said shortwave radio?
Yes.
Yes. I think specifically ham radio as well.
Yeah, I think those things are heavily regulated these days. I actually looked into that before, I think, and Matthew did too. And then we found out it was so confined now by the government and the laws that have been passed that it's not even anything you can really do. But that is actually really cool.
Well, it's not that impossible. You just have to get an FCC license to broadcast on ham frequencies.
Yeah, but you know, like, well, with my past, like, to explain this, I am under 21 years old, and the government just passed a law about a month and a half ago, really, that said that anyone under the age of 21 that wanted to purchase a long rifle, because no one under 21 can purchase a pistol, just long rifles and shotguns, had to now be put on a waiting list of at least 10 days. Well, I got put on that waiting list because I'm under 21, and it took an entire almost a month to get past the background check. And even then, they didn't even clear me then. It just reached the end of the time where they could actually hold it up, and then you just got it anyways, whether or not they said you could have it or not. And speaking of which, I forgot to tell y'all, I've got the Tommy gun. Hey! Yeah! That's actually what that was about. I actually went and got it today. It's sitting right in the corner of my room. And that thing is heavy as hell. Like, I don't know if y'all know, but that thing's like 20 pounds empty. I don't even know how much it'll weigh when we actually load it with ammo. But gosh, I mean, it is heavy as hell. We will be trying to make a video review on that in the future. We probably can't upload it on this channel or even an attached channel if we made a second one. So I might end up having to put that on Patreon. I don't know, but it's an insane gun. And also, it's made by Auto Ordnance, which is the same company that used to make them. And there's some really interesting quirks and features about it I think I'd like to show y'all on a review that is just really interesting. But anyways, it's time to move on from that little aside. But I thank you so much once again for the support. And in that instance, you know, getting back to the shortwave radio, that was a really cool thing to do. And I wish it was, I guess you could say, as free as it used to be to do, because you could do a lot of stuff with those radios back in the day, but nowadays it seems like you really can't, rather than just listen in. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, Panama Floyd, and thank you for being a longtime channel supporter and helping this channel to stay alive. Without y'all's support, this wouldn't be possible. And while we do run ads on the videos that have been coming out in the previous days, the only thing that keeps these streams alive is y'all's support. No ads run on these whatsoever unless if we get copyrighted. And so I thank you all so much once again for supporting these streams and helping us to keep them running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, another piece of news that neither me or the enforcer have said yet is yesterday we both got admitted into law school.
Hey! And I forgot to totally mention that. For some reason, the Tommy gun was more important in my mind than that. But yeah, we got accepted into law school, which was insane. I actually, funnily enough, I'll tell you all the story of how it happened for me. I was sleeping because these streams go on really late in the night, and so we sleep usually late into the day the next day. Like, I stay up until 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning just because I'm so hyped up running these streams that I have to have a moment to calm down afterwards to get ready to sleep. And I was sleeping that day, woke up at, was kind of waking up at 11:30, and then I felt on my bedstand, and I was like, I got a phone call. So I got up immediately, like, literally just, like, sat up in bed, flipped the phone to answer, and I was like, hello? And they were like, hey, this is so-and-so from the law school. I'm not going to say which one. But I was like, cool. I was like, how can I help you? And they were like, well, I was just wanting to call you just in case if you haven't gotten the email yet, but you've been accepted into law school. And I was like, what? I was like, that's actually really nice. So now Matthew and me have been accepted into law school. We actually got accepted on the same day. And that was really cool to both of us.
And I just happened to be in Home Depot when I got the call, so what a shock. I had to leave immediately.
Matthew is currently, because, you know, we're in such tight ends behind the scenes, he's currently working as a carpenter at Home Depot. I'm just kidding. But anyways.
Carpenters don't work at Home Depot.
Oh, whatever. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Also, speaking of which, talking about that Tommy gun, I will tell y'all a couple of things about it while we'll make a review on it. Oh my god, is the bolt heavy as hell. That bolt has enough force in it that if you just had the bolt alone as a weapon, I think you could actually kill people with that thing. Like, you have to pull that thing back with the power of like 1,000 strongmen to be able to hold it back to use it. And originally, the Tommy gun wasn't supposed to have a closed bolt like it does, like on this one. It was an open bolt. So they had to make it a closed bolt. You shouldn't really have to deal with that problem on a real Tommy gun, but you do on, you know, any of the new ones being made. But they came up with a fix. If you shove a little piece of metal that they give you into a certain part of the gun, the bolt stays open. How cool. Anyways, with that, I
got mangled by that stupid bolt.
Yeah, Matthew's finger actually got messed up terribly. He like almost ripped his fingernail in half, like down the middle of it on, I think, his pointing finger, if I'm correct.
Yes. Hopefully I didn't like gross anybody out or anything.
Yeah, so it's not that great. We did take Matthew as a casualty today, but still really cool. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from Hal Rose, who says, could Putin be conducting a purge of all the stuff he thinks are obsolete, meaning people and equipment, and using Ukraine as a dumping ground for old stuff?
No, because one thing that requires is that Russia has the ability to produce new stuff, which they don't. It's taken a lot for them to even get to rebuilding Tu-160s, which I'll show you all the news on here. Tu-160 Blackjacks finally went into production again in March 11th of 2022. The first strategic bomber rolled off the assembly lines, and I have to accept cookies. You can see the picture of it right there, though. The first brand new Tu-160 rolled off the production lines. It's 1960s technology, early 1970s technology for the US, and the Russians have finally gotten back to producing these things in 2022. And then immediately after they produced the first 2 or 3 airframes, I believe, they had to stop production because of the sanctions, because they now couldn't get any of the parts that they needed to produce the internal components that actually make this thing fly. So, you know, it's not really being used as a dumping ground for that reason, because that's the same story for everything that they have. They can't produce new T-90s. They can't produce upgraded T-72B3s. They can't do any of that, because if they try to, they simply don't have the equipment or the ability to make it. So what they're actually, like, quote unquote, like, hypothetically dumping in Ukraine is stuff that they can't even replace with new stuff, or at least comparable stuff. They're having to bring out older stuff from the 60s to try and make up the gaps of what they've already lost. So in that instance, no, because, you know, I've already gone through that. I'm about to go into a whole repeating loop again, but in that instance, they wouldn't be able to. But I thank you so much for the support. That is a really good question. And if the Russians were an actual viable economic and industrial power, that would make sense, but they are not at all. They are very incompetent. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep alive. And I hope that answers the question fairly well. Of course, fairly well. Not perfectly, not poorly, but fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Chip Kerwan, another channel regular. Hey! Chip says, one commentator, right or wrong, said there was a tail gun on the jet with the partially shredded wing. So in terms of Russia relying on outdated equipment, the jets that got hit, where do they stand on the decrepit timeline?
The jet that got hit, the Tu-22 M3, actually does have a tail gun, and I'll show that to y'all real quick. It's kind of funny. Right there. You see that little, like, metal cowling thing that's above the engines? That's actually a tail gun. I believe it's the same gun that was mounted onto the MiG-21s, which is like a 23mm Gush gun. And let me check that real quick. Tu-22M. Let me scroll down. You can actually see a Ukrainian Tu-22 being ripped apart right there in 2002. But anyways, let's move on further down. Further down, armaments. Yeah, it's a Gish gun. I got that right. I don't know how I remembered it was a Gish gun, but it is. So that's what they use. It's literally, funnily enough, that's the exact same gun that they put on the bottom of MiG-21 Bisses and MiG-21, like MiG-21s in general, except for the original MiG-21 F-13 that actually had some kind of like a 20mm thing that kind of sounds like a bricklayer when it fires. But anyways, it does have one. It's not that dated, however. While you would think that something with a tail gun is quite dated, these things are, I would guess you could say, some of the more modern bombers that the Russians have, and I guess you could say is somewhat comparable. And I say this with a massive stretch. It's somewhat comparable to a B-1 Lancer and what it can do. And it has a sweep wing. The strategy behind this thing was to fly at a low altitude below radar so that we wouldn't get shot down. Although the Russians don't use them at low altitude, they use them at high altitude, which makes no sense because that's wasn't what it was designed for. But it isn't that dated. But the concept of having a tail gun, it was completely obsolete by the time this thing came around. Like, what the hell are you going to do? Fire an F-14 Tomcat like 30, 50 miles away with a tail gun? Like, come on, man. Well, come on, man. What are you kidding? So with that,
Come on, man.
come on, man. You lying two-faced pony soldier. I bet you can't even do push-up, fatty. But anyways, I hope that answers the question fairly well. Because it's not that dated, actually. It's just that single concept is. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Communist Meth, who says the really cringe part. Yes, Communist Meth.
I need me some of that government-supplied meth.
At Pervitin. But I think Communist Meth might actually be a longtime channel viewer. I'm a little shaky about that, but I recall seeing the name somewhere. Let us know if you are. But Communist Meth says the really cringe part of Russian propaganda is that they completely ignore the Orange Revolution in 2003 and 4. For a nation with its corruption issues, Ukraine has always been enthusiastic about protecting its democracy.
And I thank you so much once again for the support, and that is an incredibly good point. The Ukrainians have always been trying to break away from the, I guess you say, the Russian ilk in a way. They had always been, ever since Imperial Russian times, kind of an underling of the Russians and treated like that. And they've constantly been trying to make sure that over time, and of course it's been a very uphill battle for the Ukrainians, because while they are trying to fix the problems they have with corruption, they still do have a decent amount of it. And I would largely say that that's due to the massive amounts of Russian Soviet influence that has been had over the Ukrainians for centuries, ever since around the, I guess you could really say, the 1730s and beyond. That was really when Ukraine was conquered by the Russians and became part of their empire. And so they're trying to deal with that, and they're trying to tackle it, and they're trying to create a Ukraine that lives up more so to the Kievan Rus or the Cossack ideals of yore, pretty much the 1600s and earlier. And it's been quite a struggle for them. But at the same time, you never see that they give up on this struggle. It's a constant one for them, especially now that they've become an independent country again. They're always striving to further themselves from the Russians and really align themselves more with other Eastern European countries like Poland, or really with Western Europe at large at this point. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I would definitely agree with that. There's been an uphill battle for them, but you never seen them stop that good fight that they've been trying to fight domestically inside of their country to improve things. And Zelensky, I guess you could say, while right now he seems like the best, I honestly think in Ukrainian history and with the trends we're seeing, I think there will be presidents in terms of their anti-corruption policies that will actually trump Zelensky in coming decades. Because Zelensky is, I guess you could say, the newest. I guess you could say he's the best and the strongest so far of all the anti-corruption guys. And it's slowly been growing with each different presidency that's come in place. Really just Poroshenko and Zelensky. But Zelensky is definitely taking it an extra bound. And I think he's setting a precedent where each Ukrainian president coming forward, once this war is over, and it will definitely be over by the end of Zelensky's presidency, they will be trying to further the ideas of anti-corruption and busting up corrupt groups inside of Ukraine, and hopefully we'll see a lot of progress on that in the coming decades, and they'll finally realize the nation that's been their ideal ever since their independence in 1991. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that addressed the comment incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $15 super chat from Olivia McCarthy, who says, with Ukraine going so badly for Russia, do you think that Russia will lose control of Syria and be unable to protect Lukashenko and Belarus?
I think that the Russians will be able to always protect Lukashenko and Belarus, because while they don't really have a military, anything that would threaten Belarus would come from within. It would be a domestic uprising. And the Russians will always have enough of an ability to crush them because they don't have any kind of weaponry to speak of. Unless the military was on the populist side in Belarus, the Russians could always crush it easily. Even with 1960s weaponry, then it would just look similar to the Hungary uprising of 1956. But, you know, beyond that, I think they'll always be able to protect Belarus. However, Syria requires a decent amount of power projection from them to even reach that far, just a few hundred miles from the Russian border. And considering that things are appearing to just stagnate in Syria, like we look at the Syrian civil war and its front line, and I'll show you all this right here because it's a mess. It's seriously terrible at this point. Let me actually just go to Wikipedia. They have a fairly good map on Wikipedia of the front lines, and it gets up in like a massive view. So here we go. So everything in green is controlled by the Turks. You know, yeah, I bet many of y'all have questions about that. We'll get to that. The red is controlled by Bashar al-Assad's regime. The yellow is Syrian Democratic Forces, and the orange, I believe, is a similar alliance to them. The Syrian Arab Republic, the SAA, or the SDF, and then the yellow is also the SDF. So you can see that U.S.-backed forces largely control the area. I guess you could call Kurdistan-ish. You know, like if Kurdistan existed as a country, this would be the area of Syria that would fall under Kurdistan's control. The rest of it's currently being controlled by Bashar al-Assad. There's also a small green area. What the hell is that? Revolutionary Commando Army and United States. Oh, okay. So interestingly enough, there's a odd American enclave down here in southern Syria that hasn't existed for a while. Usually the U.S. is supporting the SDF, which is kind of a little interesting. I apparently have been in the dark about that for a while. But then there's the Turks, and the Turks are going to be the largest problem to this whole thing, because even if Russia is able to still support Syria, Turkey's doing the Turkish things that they do. And, you know, I'm always saying Turkey does Turkey. That's the best instance of it right there, because everyone in the West is supporting the SDF. And then here comes Turkey, who went to war with the SDF and Bashar al-Assad and just started taking stuff. And then they're also killing Kurds back there, too, which is not really in America's interest, because the Kurds are kind of like our go-to guys right now in the Middle East to get anything done in this area. But I think that the Russians may already have kind of wrapped up the large portion of their support right now. We don't see them doing much, if not anything, in Syria. It seems that they will do something every once in a while, but it's not like it used to be back in the earlier parts of the Syrian civil war in between 2012 and 2018, where they were heavily involved. They've largely backed off since. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And Syria in its own right, while Syria has been going on for 10 years at this point, and is kind of fizzled off in everyone's public eye and attention, it is an incredibly interesting war, especially with all of the proxy wars that are being fought from within the country and what Turkey's doing and all of that. Is really honestly worth a video. It probably wouldn't be promoted by YouTube at all, considering how long ago Syria actually happened, but I mean, like, it was probably the first of the best documented wars in the world, starting in 2012. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have a $10 super chat from Midwest Vikinger, who says, "Long live the LSA," and from the LSA Cornfield Battalion.
And I thank you so much for the support, and also for creating a new battalion, the LSA Corn Battalion. Just tell me, does y'all's little song go, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, ah?
The hell?
have you never heard of corn?
No.
Apparently,
I mean, I've heard of the food, but nothing other than that.
You never heard of the heavy metal band Korn?
No.
Oh, man. You're missing out on some grade A fun right there. Some laughs. Like, I don't understand their music at all, and I'm not really into heavy metal much, but I've heard them before because they become a joke. Like, people will be like, oh my, look, I'm walking through a corn maze, and then they'll immediately go, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, ah. It's just like the funniest thing. Anyways, I thank you so much for the support, and I also thank you for the Corn Battalion. If that is y'all's song, let me know. I think that's hilarious. And also, thank you so much once again for just being a huge fan of the Lee Spring Army. I think it's the best thing to ever hit YouTube. Of course, I'm a little biased because it's, you know, my Lee Spring Army, but I thank you so much once again for the support and being a proud member of it. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and up next, big shout out to William Jones for putting in a $10 donation, but William doesn't leave a comment. But nonetheless, thank you very much for that support, William, and we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Marcus Burtonshaw, who says, "Salutations from Thailand. Great video on the new B-21 Raider on a similar topic. Have you seen the UK's new stealth fighter, the Tempest, and Slava Ukraine?"
The Tempest Fighter. And also, thank you so much for the support from Thailand and also Slava Ukraini. And then the Tempest Fighter. Let me check that out. So it appears to be a rendering right now. Apparently, we don't have an actual picture of it. Here's the Tempest they used to have in the Second World War. largely based on the Typhoon. It was like an improved Typhoon. These things were really cool. But anyways, moving on from that rabbit hole, because that's not what we're here for. We're here for the Bay Systems Tempest. Because anyone can produce nothing. No one. Wait a minute, hang on. Let me start that all over. No one can produce anything better than Bay. Anyways, here's the Bay Tempest, at least in a rendering. And it looks like it shares a lot of design principles, at least in the front fuselage, with an F-22. And it's also planned to be introduced in 2035, so I'm guessing that we'll probably see this thing rolled out here in a couple of years. And also, it looks like the United Kingdom and Japan joined this as a joint development program. Really interesting. We can also see a mock-up. Oh, wait a minute, they got a mock-up. Hang on, we now have to go find real pictures of this thing. If they have a mock-up, there's got to be more pictures of it. So, let's see here. Picture. There it is. I mean, that thing's made out of plywood for sure. Like, it just is. But it's a really bizarre-looking design. It kind of reminds me a lot of a YF-23 Black Widow. And I think they may have taken some inspiration from that information, or at least the knowledge of it. You see another rendering of it right there. It is bizarre, to say the least. But then again, these bizarre angles and shapes help it to, of course, I guess you could say deflect radar signatures so that way it doesn't get picked up. But man, that is honestly right there, Matthew, that is probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Well, it's like something from an alien.
I personally like the design though, but I'm not sure if it's been how many years since they started developing it.
2017, but wait a minute, that may be misleading, because if you look at the B-21 Raiders developmental phase, it's been very long as well, and I'll show you that real quick. Oh, dang it, let me go to Wikipedia, because they will actually just give you the timeline. So, design and development. The classified long-range strike bomber program, which designed the B-21, began in 2011.
Dang, 2011?
Yeah, and 11 years later, we finally see a product of it at all, which was released just literally a week ago. So this kind of design turnaround, actually for it to start in 2017, and now we're starting to hear that it'll be introduced in 2032, that is a very short developmental phase. Like, that's very short, even compared to something like the B-21, which we have a lot of experience in, I guess you could say, producing similar kinds of aircraft, like the B-2 Spirit.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, like, that's not bad at all for the Tempest, and oddly enough, it's just so interesting. It's a bizarre design. Honestly, it looks alien-like. This is something I would mistake for a UFO if you told me that this was extraterrestrial. I wouldn't doubt it. I would actually believe you entirely. I mean, it's just weird. Look at this thing.
Yeah, it's very sort of like nose-heavy looking.
You know what? If I had to, I'm gonna have to show this to y'all, because this is something I think it looks a lot like the YF-23 right here, the Black Widow, which was supposed to be the competitor to the F-22, and then it failed miserably, and then they took some of the stuff they learned from it, and then they integrated it into the F-22. But this thing looks a lot like it, with like not really the wing shape, but the overall, I guess you could say, layout of it.
Has it only got one tail wing on it?
No, it's got two. There's one over here, but it's very light.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like barely visible.
Yeah, you can see a better picture of it right here, and it looks similar. I mean, it really does.
Interesting.
But anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support, and also I thank you for enjoying the B-21 Raider video. Not a lot of people got to see it, but I still thought it was a fun video nonetheless, and I loved covering all of the detailed information that we could find on it, although there's not a lot, because almost everything about it's classified. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. Also, before we leave this, here's a cool picture of the F-22, the YF-22, and the YF-23 side by side. For some reason, the YF-22 looks better than the F-22. Like the shape of it looks cooler.
Oh no, I like the Raptor better.
Well, that is the Raptor. That's just a prototype Raptor. It's just the prototype.
I thought you said it was different.
No. Like it's a little bit different, but like here's the picture of the YF-22A down here. I'm circling it, and then here's the picture of the F-22 that's in service, and you can see that the wing shape's a little bit different. And honestly, I like this wing shape better. It's more so like a dart shape than kind of like a I don't know how to explain this shape here, but it just looks more visually appealing. This one does.
True.
But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Oats Air, who says, I haven't been able to get on the Sunday fundraiser streams, but I hope to get there next Sunday. Please take a question from the chat, Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support, Oats Air, and also Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And also, we will make sure to take a question from live chat. Also, it's totally fine if you can't show up to streams. Like, I understand, like, one thing I want to let everyone know, I completely understand that everyone's got lives outside of the stream. And if you miss a couple of them, we will be more than happy to have you back. Like, oh, Sarah, we have noticed that you've been missing. And we always notice when everyone's missing. And we're always glad to see y'all back in the live chat. So don't think at all that we're, like, angry or anything. We are happy to have you back here on stream. And so with that, let's get a live chat in Old Sarah's honor and his return.
And the live chat goes to Carl Hacker, who says, what do you know about Gepard ammo from Norway because of Swiss restrictions?
I don't know a lot about Gepard ammo from Norway. I don't know if they produce it any longer or anything similar. Honestly, I would have to declare ignorance on that side note, because while a lot of people think my knowledge is very extensive, and in some areas it is, in the areas of ammunition and I guess you could say the production of it, I'm almost completely ignorant in that, where it is produced, how much people have, and what's available. The Norwegians do field Gepards. However, I don't know how much ammo they would have for them. So Norwegian Gepard. Let's see here if they are still currently using. We can see that the only war that the Gepard has actually served in was the Russo-Ukrainian war, so it's finally spreading its wings. That's pretty neat. And also, let's see, used by, let's go to the operators list. Current operators, former operators. It looks like Norway actually has never used the Gepard. I was wrong on that. It was the Dutch. It's I think I was getting them mixed up. I swore that they used the Gepard. I'm wrong, though. But anyways, we can see that the only remaining operators are the Brazilians. That they bought theirs from the Germans. The Jordanians that have 60 of them. And then, well, actually, they received 60 of them from the Dutch. And the Romanians that have 43 of them. And all of them are retired German versions. So I don't think the Norwegians could ever even supply the Ukrainians with any Gepard ammo, considering that they never had Gepards and the need to produce any ammo for them. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have another $10 super chat from Oats Air, who says, happy 105th birthday to Finland. Today is Finnish Independence Day.
And happy birthday to Finland. Of course, a whole bunch of people on the Sunday stream were simping for the Finnish Prime Minister. And also, Finland is 105 years old. Let's go. And they're a really cool country. And Matthew, was that sent in a foreign currency?
No.
Oh, dang it. I was hoping they were from Finland, because I was going to drop down and like show a town. We'll show Turku, though, because since we're talking about Finland, let's just show what it looks like. So we're going to drop down to Turku. And man, oh man, does this place look neat. It's also very clean. Like, look at this road. Like, not a single crack or anything in it. It's perfect. It's perfectly paved. That Scandinavianness. I don't know how to explain it, but every Scandinavian country is like the cleanest on earth. Like, you don't see any other European countries that get to this level of cleanliness. It's insane. And also, the buildings look pretty nice, too. And so with that...
Well, they have a subway.
Subway? Eat Fresh?
Yeah, they had a subway over there.
Where? Right there? Oh, yeah, they do. It's blurred out. Man.
It's secret Subway.
Man,
oh, there it is.
Subway is not eating fresh. Subway is like the pretender of eating fresh. That's just like honestly, I'm not a big fan of Subway. I don't mean to rat on them too bad, but yeah, you know. Anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support, and happy birthday to Finland. 105 years old, it's still going strong. Really cool history to the country. We could go on about that for hours. But honestly, out of all of the Scandinavian countries, and I know that a lot of people are big fans of Norway, but I'd actually say that I'm a big fan of Sweden out of all of them. They are incredibly cool. Really neat history throughout. And, you know, while the Norwegians get all the credit, largely for Vikings, the Swedes really dominated from, I guess, in the northern area, from the 1600s onwards, and then you can also consider the Danes to be of a similar group. Really, is Denmark considered... Is Denmark Scandinavian? Do they consider it Scandinavian? Yeah, apparently it is. I always thought that it was just considered Western European, but apparently they get the qualification of being Scandinavian, and that would historically make sense. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for pointing that out, so that way we can recognize the birthday of Finland.
All right, and up next, we have a... Excuse me.
What the hell was that?
Okay,
Like, that
I felt a
wasn't even
sneeze. I felt a sneeze coming on there for a second. I was about to lose it. But anyways, I think I can hold it back. We have a $100 super chat, very generous, from Arnie Yunt, who is a channel legend. And Arnie, I'm really holding back to sneeze right now. So let me see if I can get through your super chat.
dying.
Arnie says, congrats to you both on your acceptance into law school. Put this towards a dinner celebration and keep up the awesome work. Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Arnie. That support helps us out greatly tonight. And I thank you so much for it because it's helping us to keep these streams going. And so I got to thank you so much starting off for congratulating us into our acceptance on law school. I'm glad that a lot of people are also celebrating with us a little bit here on this channel because that's a big deal for us. That is part of my I guess you could, that's part of my steps into trying to become president of the United States. I have to, of course, get to law school first, so that way I can at least have some credibility. Because while I don't have to work on YouTube with credibility, like I can sit around, people who actually are fighting in Ukraine, people who have 20 years of military experience, and then I'm just considered equal amongst them all, except for a couple of people who whine and complain that I don't know what I'm talking about. Although I have gotten about as much stuff right as anyone else, which is kind of funny to me. But anyways, getting beyond that, I do have to have credibility at least to become the president of the United States. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to make sure to go to law school. And also on top of that, being an attorney is something that I also find very interesting. It's just an interesting profession, and the details of it are even more interesting. Not just the trials, but everything that happens beforehand. And we will make sure to put that towards a dinner celebration. We're going to put that towards, what are we going to put that towards, Matthew? What kind of food? Pizza?
Pizza.
Maybe wings and things.
Wangs.
Have you ever wanted to get yourself some delicious wangs?
That was a terrible Sam Elliott. I'm kind of losing that one today, but
excuse me, could I have a wing?
I'm going to cook up the best wings, the killer wings. They're going to be delicious. Everyone around's going to want one. Wings.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Can I have a wing?
The top 1%.
That sounds like Birdman or something.
The top 1% of this country owns half of this country's wings. We cannot have that anymore. We have to have universal wing care. We have to have it. It has to be comprehensive.
But anyways, I thank you so much once again for the support, Arnie. We literally pulled out like every voice we ever do for that, but I gotta thank you so much once again, and we will make sure to keep up the awesome work, and your support is helping us to do that. It helps us to get to the Sunday night fundraisers, so that way every single week we can celebrate the glory of the Leaf Spring Army, and helps us on the day-to-day basis of running this channel, because without y'all support on these streams, it's not possible for us to run this channel. It would literally just fall apart, because we would have to go and find jobs to do off stream, and we would have to work like 20 to 40 hours at those, and then all of the time we use to do these live streams and run this channel would completely disappear. And so we owe it to all of y'all, like you, Arnie Yunt, for helping this channel to stay alive. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And yes, thank you very much, Arnie, for the kind words. And I also appreciate it myself, and we do appreciate it. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Cliff H, who says, thanks for the video in reference to the Bakhmut front. I'd like to stick it up the blowhole of pro-Russian YouTubers who constantly yammer about how Russia is grinding away Ukraine forces in Bakhmut by design.
And I thank you so much for the support, and I would have to agree with that. I thought it was a video that was worthwhile making. Also, in case if y'all were wondering, I actually got the idea of making that video from the comments section of the video I made before that. Someone said, hey, could you make a video about why Bakhmut's not going to be taken? And I was like, yeah, totally. I was like, that's a great video idea. And so I made it. And if y'all ever have a video idea and y'all are watching those videos, throw it down in the comment section below. I actually go through and read all of the video comments because a lot of y'all have interesting stuff to add to the video that I couldn't add due to time constraints, a whole bunch of other stuff like that. And so I got to thank you so much for the support. And I do agree, Bakhmut can't really be taken. If the Russians do take it, it's going to be at an incredibly high cost. It's going to be tens of thousands dead and dozens of thousands wounded. And I just don't think that they'll ever be able to take it. And of course, a lot of people said in the title, and this is something I have to explain here real quick. The title says why Ukraine will never lose Bakhmut. And a lot of people in the comments section were saying, well, don't ever say, never say never. But the thing is with YouTube is that you have to say things with a definitive statement because it's not as interesting a title of why the Ukrainians will most likely, although they could, never lose Bakhmut. That doesn't really come off as good of a title. And so you have to make sure that while you're delivering quality information that's truthful, you always also have to make sure that people see it and actually want to watch it. So That's the reason why that title was written that way, just in case of some of y'all were hearing, like, it might be taken. It might be, but it's an incredibly small chance. It's like 5%, 10% chance. And that's if everything goes wrong for Ukraine and somehow the Russians literally just pull, I guess you could say, like a B-2 Spirit out of their rear end and start carpet bombing the place. And so with that, I hope that does address that comment fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support and also watching those videos. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Fushia Kone, who says, given Ukraine's success at attacking Russia's air wing of their nuclear triad, should the USA consider preemptive strikes, and could the West obliterate Russia with minimal consequences?
Thank you so much for the straightforward question. And to answer it, yeah, I think we could. Considering that the Ukrainians are able to destroy Russian strategic bombers where they sit, I think that's actually insane, and especially with something as old as the KHVSH. I forgot what it was. Let me just go back and look at that real quick. We got one right here where we show the air defense. So, Tu-141s. If the Ukrainians are able to use those and strike 400 miles into Russia, good God, imagine what the Americans could do, Matthew, just alone, not even including Europe. Just imagine what the United States could do to the Russians.
Yeah, really.
Oh my Lord, it would be unbelievable. We could knock out the entire electrical grid within hours. We did that in Iraq, so I know we would probably do that there. We could knock out pretty much every single Russian bomber where they sit on their airfields within hours. I mean, good Lord, the results would be unbelievable. The only thing we probably couldn't knock out would be the intercontinental ballistic silos, because those are heavily guarded, defended, and have a lot of armor to them, surprisingly. Although I would highly doubt that that's really true. I feel like that's just kind of a Russian propaganda myth at this point, but they supposedly do. And that's the only thing we couldn't destroy, but their land army we could destroy within seconds. The Europeans could even do it on their own. And while the Finnish Prime Minister, which many people simp for, said that the Europeans were not strong enough to take on Russia, I would have to beg to differ, actually, especially seeing how the Russians have been doing right now. Beyond the Europeans being reliant on Russian natural gas, that's the only weakness they have. Militarily, they could obliterate the Russians, blow them to Kingdom Come any day of the week, even without the United States being there. Because if the Ukrainians can... Well, I'm just saying, if the Ukrainians...
I mean, personally, I think that the Prime Minister can't be wrong.
What, because she's pretty?
Well, you got to simp.
Honestly, I'm going to say she was almost right on the mark. It's close. The only instance I would say that would be true would be with Europe's dependency on Russian natural resources. But beyond that, militarily, if the Ukrainians can best the Russians, really anyone can best the Russians in the Western world. Even the Polish on their own could probably beat the hell out of the Russians easily. And so with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that was a good answer. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Callie J, who does not leave a comment. But Callie, thank you very much for that support, and we do appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from the B Knight 3, who says, Knucking Futz, Yuri calls for aid. Will we get this brave hero the gear he asked for, a new truck or SUV to ride into battle, and perhaps somehow some ammo?
And I thank you so much for the support. Sadly, due to how we run fundraisers on this channel, we can't really help out Ukrainian soldiers directly, because I would have to set up a PayPal or something similar, and then receive the funds, and then there's really no way for anyone to know whether I'm just stealing that money or not. And I know that everyone trusts me. I know that that's the thing amongst all subscribers. They're like, we trust you, but I don't like that look, because that throws in a lot of questions in the future, and there's really no way to prove it at all. Like who's to say that we wouldn't raise $20,000 and then I spend $8,000 on a truck and then $1,000 on ammo and then you steal the rest? That is something that's always a huge question in my head. I'm not saying I would do that if tempted. I'm saying that that's something that I think people would start to say and start to talk about if I did something like that. And I always want to make sure that this channel keeps a very clean image with this fundraising, and it's entirely transparent with how much is raised, where it goes, and give a lot of people, it will give everyone, whether they trust me or not, proof that we are doing exactly what we say. That's one thing that's always important to me. And so sadly, we cannot run a fundraiser like that due to it not being able to be run through the YouTube Guide Star program. And with that, I thank you so much for the support. But I highly encourage that if y'all can find if Nucking Futz is running his own fundraiser, go support it, because we know he's doing great work over there. We've seen it. He's been on Operator Starsky's channel. He's a guy who's actually fighting on the front lines. If he runs his own Patreon or his own PayPal to get people to support that, by all means, go over there and support it. But sadly, I don't think I could run anything on this channel, just due to the fact that we can't really run it the normal way we do. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. I'm sorry if that lets anyone down, but I always want to make sure that we are very safe with our fundraising. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Miss Dissa, who says, enjoy your vids in LSA chat. Keep going and good luck in your pursuits. Big topic, but how is artillery functioning and maintenance affected by freezing temps?
And I thank you so much for the support, Miss Dissa, and you're helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you so much for that. Now, to answer the question, also LSA chat, I like how people say LSA stuff. It's like the mech, like mech burger, you know, like mech nuggets. It's kind of like our version of that. Like, it's like the LSA live chat. I like that. I love, one thing I think is great is that the LSA is such a community. Before I go and answer that question, because this is something that just sticks out to me and I think is very cool. Also, I'll probably address that in a second, but anyways, I think that's really cool how the LSA has its own identity and it exists as a force. One thing that I find kind of funny is that we exist as such a force, and people are so proud to be members of the Lee Spring Army that I've actually heard that a channel that we've seen before, and we've actually shouted out before, has apparently started to complain that Lee Spring Army members are saying that they're Lee Spring Army members, which is kind of interesting to me. Haven't really looked into it much, but I didn't really get it. I was like, you know, like it's what we are, it's what we do, you know, like I don't understand that much, really, honestly. But anyways, I love that people love to be members of the LSA, and I think that no one should be ashamed of ever being a member of the LSA. Feel free to let people know, like, long live the LSA. Hey, have you ever heard of the LSA? Come join the LSA, be one of us. You know, like, suck the soul out of their body, something like that, you know? I'm just kidding. Don't suck the soul out of their body, but anyways, I think it's cool, and I think it's really neat, and don't ever feel bad about that. I don't know why he's got a problem with it. You know, I've seen some people, I've even had some people on Discord bringing it up to me. They're like, hey, so-and-so said that, you know, he's getting really annoyed with it. I don't really know why, you know, like, I don't get it. Like, I think it's honestly cool when NAFO members pop up in our chat, and they're like, hey, I'm part of NAFO. I'm just like, go NAFO, you know? I'm not sitting there, like, trying to, the NAFO people, you know, I don't get it. Anyways, moving on from that and answering the question, artillery maintenance can get a little bit more difficult in the winter. Lubricants, however, like oils, do not freeze below zero. It takes actually a decent amount of low temperatures to freeze oils, so that part of the maintenance isn't going to be affected all too much. But I guess you could say that cold always has an effect on everything. And also the fact that moisture, considering that snow just sticks around forever and it creates very muddy conditions, it will definitely make it a little bit more difficult to maintain the pieces because they're going to be getting moisturized a lot. Think of like a Activa lotion, but worse. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Ms. Tisa. And I hope we were able to get that question answered fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and with that being said, we're on to our next one, which is from Chip Kerwan once again, who puts in a $5 donation this time. And says, how many of those hot-wired 1974 semi-Soviet Tupelo honey rockets do they have in the arsenal?
We have no idea. That's the craziest thing. We don't know how many of those Tu-141s the Ukrainians have. They may have hundreds of them from what we know. They may have just dozens of them. So sadly, we have no idea how much longer they can keep the fun going in Russia. I mean, hell, we might even see some land in Moscow, somewhere near an airbase there, and that would really send a message. And so with that, I hope that answers the question somewhat ambiguously. I can't really give you an honest answer because we have no idea how many there are, and it doesn't seem that there's public numbers on it. But thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope we were able to at least give an idea as to why we can't really answer that question all too well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, could an improvised Hrem-2 or newer Ukrainian drone also be a possible weapon?
Yes, they do have the range. However, if we have gotten confirmation from the Ukrainians that it is a Tu-141, Bizarre, I know. I mean, like, you would think that they would accredit it to a more advanced system, even if it was a Tu-141, but it wasn't. It was just a old drone. But they could use those. By no means, don't ever rule those out. They definitely have the range to reach as far as the Tu-141s. They even have enough range to reach a little bit further, although there's nothing really in between Ryazan and Saratov of note until you get to Nizhny Novgorod, Kazan, and also Samara. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Honeybee Care, who says, I heard the initial group of Ukraine pilots returned from U.S. fighter training. It seems a little fast, and can you confirm that they're back? Where are the new jets?
From what we've been able to confirm, they are back. They've been back for about 2 weeks. However, it appears that the jets aren't following them. But we also know that apparently all of them were trained on the usage of the F-16, from what we've been able to tell and from what our information suggests, although that may be incorrect. We don't always get the clear image from public reports. However, still, we don't know where the aircraft are. It seems that the aircraft are still being held up. It seems like the United States is very reluctant about sending them, and so we have no idea if they will pop up or won't. But it's still something of note that they did train pilots how to fly the F-16s, apparently in a very quick turnaround time. Maybe because they were familiarized with the basics of flying aircraft, so they didn't have to go over that. They just had to go over, I guess you could say, training them on how Western aircraft work. But still, we haven't seen them yet, and we don't know when they'll show up. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. With that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from The Wolfman, who says that guy will be working with Zelensky on his stand-up routine.
That guy, oh yeah, that guy who was talking about, they grilled Kelsier, we grilled them. That guy was hardcore. Like, I like that guy. He was dropping some raw bars in the middle of that actual, like, pretty much mini documentary that he was explaining what happened here. He was like, pieces were flying, kind of like a picnic, like he's just making all kinds of jokes. I liked him. And I thought, honestly, I would love to see him talk about more of his war stories because he did them in such a funny light. And it also shows, even though this guy is literally blowing Russians to bits, he's still able to joke about it. Why can't I? And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And I think he will be working with Zelensky to create some new content. And honestly, I think he is, by blowing Russians away. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says Russian public opinion is plummeting. The strikes on the air bases were for propaganda, and there is no safe place in Russia while Ukraine is occupied.
And I thank you for the support, and I would have to say, I would largely believe that. However, I have to wait until we get official numbers on that, because I assume that the strikes in Crimea and also on the Kerch Bridge would have lessened war support in Russia, but apparently, according to Radio Free Europe and their polling, it didn't. It actually went up a little bit. So I'll have to wait and see if that's true. I would assume it would be true. And I would have to agree. It shows that there's no safe place anywhere in the Ukrainian theater. Even for Russians inside of Russia, they could be hit at any moment by Ukrainian drones flying hundreds of miles into their territory, and the Russians are completely powerless to stop any of it. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well, and hopefully we will see that public opinion drops like a rock after seeing that the war is actually being brought to them. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have another super chat from Philip Fixes, who puts in another $5 donation and says, I've said it 1,000 times, Ukrainians are representing the values that America swears by with their blood, and freedom isn't free. Slava Ukraine and Heroem Slava.
And thank you so much for the support, but has he said that 1,000 times, Matthew? Can we check the live chats to see?
He said it about 30 times.
30, incorrect. To the salt mines with you. But I thank you so much for the support. And you have pretty much said it 1,000 times. I mean, 30 is close to 1,000, at least on live chatting. And I would have to say that they do hold a lot of ideals that the Americans hold up to as well. And they continue to always strive and fight every single day to try and realize those goals. And I think that's very admirable of a nation to always be trying to tackle its corruption instead of just living with it and trying to fix what they've been given after the Soviet Union fell. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I would say that's completely true. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from GNF, who says, why is Hungary not helping Ukraine? Do they have some beef with them? It seems odd that they're being so pro-Russian after what the Soviets did.
Hungary is kind of going through a little bit of an odd phase. It's really hard to explain. I guess you could say that, you know, and I'm sure many of you all have kids, that it's kind of like when your kid goes through their teenage years and, you know, they do that weird, like, thing in high school that's really cringy where they're like an emo or a goth. That's kind of them right now. In the best way to explain it, and that's a really dumb way to explain it. They're just kind of going against the grain, you know, for some reason. They can't really get into a lot explaining it because it does get very political. But in the end, because of it, they're kind of on the fence. While they vote in line with all European Union countries whenever it comes to anything in the United Nations and also supporting Ukraine, they don't actually support Ukraine with supplies or materials. So it's kind of beyond that. It's just really hard to explain, and I can't really get into it because it could reflect on the American political situation a little bit. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment at least as best as we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $4 super chat from For Goodness Sake, who says, I'm curious why I'm yet to see a Russian military woman on the front lines. Maybe they are exempt from military operations.
I think they are, if I'm correct. And that may be why you haven't seen them yet. Although in the Soviet times, they weren't. They actually were on the front lines as snipers and other things. But I believe in this current war, they're just using them. And I guess you could say the best looking of them. This is something that is actually kind of crazy. In a lot of other countries, like the U.S. are starting to do it. They use the best looking women in the armed forces to try and recruit more men. The U.S. is starting to do that now. You can actually see that on TikTok where, and it's kind of something that they're kind of keeping under I guess you say under the radar as best they can, kind of like how they keep under the radar that all of the Top Gun movies are actually U.S. Navy recruitment ads, and they actually spend a lot of money and give a lot of support to try and make those movies as realistic as they can, even giving over entire aircraft carriers and aircraft to the film production crews. But anyways, they use the women in the military, some of them, to try and recruit more men. Kind of the U.S. is doing that now too, to summarize what I was saying there. And I think you are correct. I think they're all in supporting roles, and that's why we aren't seeing them on the front at all. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and to round off our super chat segment, big shout out to Junebug72, For Goodness Sake once again. Also, Matthew Guspert, O-Tubes, Stefan, and also Secular Sakai. They each put in a $4, $2, and $1 donation, respectively. And Secular Sakai says, long live the LSA.
Hey, long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you to all of y'all so much for supporting us, so that way the Lee Spring Army can continue to live another day. Thank you to all of y'all so much for the support. It helps this channel keep on running, and without viewers like you, it wouldn't be possible. And so with that, I gotta thank you all. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are moving on to our live chat questions. And of course, up first, we have to address the Morse code. Mark Hodges, BME, CFA, and WFTU, all of the Morse code regulars have figured it out. They say Russia sucks so bad, their planes get blown up on the runway and Slava Ukraine.
Ding, 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 ding. Y'all did get that correct. That is what the Morse code says exactly. They do suck. And I don't know of any military out there in the world that's really good that just has their planes really blow up on the really runway. And also, what's interesting is that Google Maps has actually uncensored these airfields so well. You can actually tell what kind of aircraft are where. Like, these are Su-25s. You can even see that 2 Su-34s are taxiing to the runway right here. Like, that's bizarre. Like, you're actually seeing them in operation. You can even see the 2 paths that they probably left from. It's just weird.
Won't that be cool when Google Maps is like a live stream one day? Whenever you zoom in, it's like a live feed from the satellite.
Dude, that would be crazy. Honestly, that would be bizarre. Also, look at all these little MiG-29s over here that they just have hanging out. Like, they're not even...
Why does it look like they're like stacked up on each other? It looks like the nose cone is hitting the other one.
Human centipede. It's a MiG centipede. Oh, Lord. Yeah, but I think they're just being abandoned, and they just left them here near all the other operational aircraft. That shows you how bad off the Russians are, so they just leave them there. Like, if we go to a U.S. airbase, like, let's go to Eglin. I bet you they have this one blurred out because, you know, they don't want anyone to see it. But let me show y'all. Nope, that's the airport. We're looking for Eglin. Come on, Eglin. Duke Fields. Oh, they don't. Look at that. So you see some C-130s. And we can see further up the tarmac. I forgot which one that is. That's almost like a Navy plane, I believe. And I believe Pensacola's the Naval Air Station. And then we can see a couple of small freight caravan planes. But notice this, Matthew. We don't see a single old plane out here just lying around. Those are gone.
That
Big
is
difference.
weird.
Yeah, well, that's not weird. That's just normal. I mean, like at least we're not the Russians just leaving our old crap at the same airfield it was used at 40 years ago. And look, they got a subway here. Subway sandwich.
A subway right out in the middle of the dirt.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the dirt. I wonder what kind of reviews this thing's got. 2.9 stars? Oh my lord. This place has rats. Found a whole rat in my Cobb salad. Oh my god. What? This subway does not exist. I was bummed out to find out there wasn't one here. I don't know why
Did he seriously drive onto the base to go find out if there's a subway right there?
This man breached base security, was getting shot at to find out there's no subway sandwich. I don't know why this is here. There's never been one here. There is one, however, across this at the 7th, but not here. Does not exist. Never has. This isn't a subway.
This isn't a subway. People are seriously like breaching the base to go find out it's not a subway.
Oh lord, man, they're getting like the damn base guards at the gate on them with guns, and they're like, I thought there was a sandwich here. Oh, that gives me a good kick. I love that. That chaos that's coming from a subway, hypothetically being right on the tarmac, is hilarious. But let's see. Let me try and find what's another air base, Matthew. What is there?
Nellis.
Nellis, yeah. Let's go look at Nellis because that's actually a pretty sizable one. Hopefully they don't have a. There we go. In the middle of Las Vegas. So let's see what kind of aircraft they have here. Wow, what the hell are those Jaguars? I think those are Sepcat Jaguars.
Cool. A Jaguar. Oh, look at that thing. That looks like one of those trainer aircraft.
L-39 Albatrosses, I believe. And I think these are all part of the aggressor squad. We can also see that for some reason, for nobody in particular, they have set up a display of the F-22, the A-10, an F-15E, and an F-15C. For no reason, there's no one there.
It's a Warthog. They're probably doing a photo shoot for the Air Force.
Probably for recruitment reasons, to get a cool poster. But I mean, like, they really know how to appeal to the masses, man. Like, these are the aircraft that you think of when you think of the Air Force. Like, man, that's actually really neat. But anyways, notice again, no new aircraft. We can also see more aggressor squad aircraft. These are actually painted up in like a modern Russian camouflage. They're F-16s. And these are used to simulate battles, air battles, and dogfights with a adversary like the Russians. These planes try to fly like the Russian doctrine forces aircraft to fly. It's very interesting, and it's all based out of Nellis. You can even see some more freaky camos, so that way you can know that they're aggressors. But once again, big note, no old aircraft just lying around. All of those are gone. They don't just leave those around, and that shows you how badly funded the Russians are, is that they can't even spend the money nor the time to move those off the airfield and find some place for them to rot. They just rot where they are. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Mad Machine, who says, could Ukraine do series of hit-and-run attacks on the orcs, on roads, bridges, military targets, to divert troops and equipment from the front line?
They could. That is something that they definitely could. And they do that a decent deal in a way. Right now, they just hit supply lines, logistics units and such behind the front lines to knock them out. And that causes a massive hindrance for the Russians because now that supply convoy and the supplies within it that were, I guess you could say, sent for a certain unit have now been destroyed, and they have to send a second convoy to complete the exact same job. And so they kind of do that in a way, and I think that if they aren't doing that exactly, I think that they should. And so with that, I hope that answers the question. We are on to the next one.
And real quick, big shout out to Dubsy Dabster for putting in a $2 donation. And Dubsy, thank you very much for that support once again. You're always supporting us, and we do appreciate it, as always, very much. And up next, we have a question from John Dameron, who says, have you heard anything about the generator ships heading to Odessa to help get power going there?
We haven't. I hate to say it. It's kind of disappointing. It was such good news, and then we didn't hear anything on it. And I don't think they're making it there. We could actually pull up the power generating ships. Let's see here. A power ship. Apparently that's just a whole class of ship. What the? Wow, that is just literally a barge. It's a power plant on a barge. It's even got an office and stuff in the middle. What in the world? That is just nuts. That's even crazier than the picture we saw before. We can also see a nuclear power ship. What?
Ooh, a floating nuclear power ship. That doesn't sound like a good idea.
That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. It was scrapped, though, in 2015 to 2019. Whew, we really missed a disaster right there. Imagine that thing having an accident and the nuclear reactor just sinks to the bottom of the sea and is constantly emitting the most radioactive material ever. That is literally a disaster in the making. I'm all for nuclear
Could you
power.
Could you imagine that thing sinking, going down, then water getting the reactors, and everybody that just like fell off the boat is going to get radiated to the hell?
Oh my god, imagine trying to fish for like bluefin tuna in that area and all the bluefin tuna are like the scales are just shedding off of them and stuff. Like that
They turn into greenfin tuna.
Oh, that's actually pretty dark but pretty funny. But yeah, I guess they would. Anyways, we haven't heard any specific news about the power barges making it to Ukraine, and apparently they haven't yet. We can see that 8 days ago was the last time Turkish power ships were supposed to be heading to Ukraine, and we can see that they were in talks, but it appears that they haven't amounted to much. And so with that, I hope that answers the question, and we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, big shout out to Frank Albrecht for putting in, I believe, I'm trying to do that translation in my head. I think that's a $15 donation. But Frank, thank you very much for that. That is very kind of you. And then for sure, would you like to add a few words?
Yes, I would.
We are gathered here today to mourn the passing of Frank Albrecht.
I'm just kidding. I thank you so much for the support, Frank. You have been around forever and helping this channel keep on running, and your support helps this channel to stay alive. And so, for the bottom of our hearts, here on the Lee Spring Army, both Matthew and me, that's our whole team, I thank you so much for keeping this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again. Also, by request from the live chat, Matthew, someone said to check out Fairchild Air Force Base and all the B-52s. So let's take a look. All right, there's some KC-10s.
This is where they keep the Nighthawk too, isn't it?
I think so. I think you're right. A lot of KC-10s. Actually, KC-135. Sorry, duh. I'm so stupid. Those are not KC-10s. Those are KC-135s. We can see more KC-135s. More KC-135s. This entire airbase is like a giant fuel tanker. And more KC-135s. Where the hell are the B-52s? Did they move them out? Bizarre. Like, huh. The whole base is literally just tankers. At least on this satellite image. I'm sure there's other aircraft that are probably based here. Where the hell? Huh. Andrews Air Force Base. Let's go look at Andrews Air Force Base. That's where Air Force One is kept.
Is that yours?
Yes, that is mine. They named it after me. That sounds so stuck up. Like, anyways, C-130s, pretty cool. Also, when you see a couple of C-130s inside of their hangars, they're so big that they just stick out the end. Big chungus. Anyways, anyways, you see some more KC-135s. More. They're everywhere. I think the U.S. Air Force is made up of nothing but fuel tankers at this point. Let's go over here. Okay, we got some Iroquois. Wow. That's what we need. Iroquois. Hueys, probably. They're probably not even Iroquois. They're probably just Hueys. More of them. Just nothing but them. They're nuts. Bizarre. Crazy. Let's see. We got a private jet right here. I don't even know what kind that is. I'm feeling like it's a Gulfstream or a Bombardier, but I don't really know. Let's see. We can also see some of the...
Oh, these are the executive planes, I think.
These are some of the executive planes. They have a 757 here and a 737. I think that's an 800 or... I think that's actually a Boeing 737-700 due to its length. But I wouldn't really know for sure. And we don't see Air Force One. Actually, we can see the Air Force One hangar right here. They have it gracefully put on for us. And they don't have any pictures of the inside. But you can largely tell it's probably just a big open area with Air Force One sitting inside. We can also see... not an executive plane. That's just a normal 737 that's unmarked. So I don't know what that one's for. There's nothing here. Like, the whole this is a massive air base as well. It's got 2 runways, which is sizable for most air bases, and it's got nothing here. Really weird. Maybe if we go to the Naval Air Station or the Naval Air College, would they have something? March Air Force Base has old planes. Let's go to... We're on a quest to look at all the Air Force bases in the country right now, but let's take a look at this one. Alright, so we got... Oh my god, it's more KC-135s, a C-17 at least, and a single F-35. This one's being set up for a photo shoot too. You can tell there's camera tripods right there. C5 Gallic. No. What?
Whoa! It's just a whale fin.
It's a whale. What else do we have here? More KC-135s. Holy moly! Is this all the U.S. Air Force has? KC-135, some C-17s. The first that's different, and then another. That's a tiny 737. That is like the 737-400 if they even made one. Is there any airbase? Someone's got to help us here. Jeez, I mean, there's got to be more than KC-135s, right? B-52s are probably in the UK. Did someone say Chongas?
Do you want to see a what was at the time a secret plane on Google Maps that they caught on camera?
Yeah, sure.
Let me send you the coordinates. It should still be there unless they've taken it out.
All right. Let me see about popping up here. All right. Let's put in these coordinates. Let me make sure to include that apostrophe. I'm screwing up. Let's see here. All right. So let's pop back over here. All right. Let's put in the coordinates. Man, this is grass. You lied to me.
It was there. It was there. They took it out. I was waiting to see when they were going to finally do it, and they took it away.
Well, what was it?
It was a B-2 bomber there.
Huh. Well, yeah, they took it out. They airbrushed that over. Where in the world is this, anyways? Missouri? No wonder. No wonder. Dude, probably the people in Missouri stole it. Like, it's just not there because it was stolen. I'm just kidding. Missouri's a nice place. We've been to both St. Louis and Kansas City. I gotta say Kansas City was better than St. Louis by far. Or St. Louis, however you call it. But anyways, there's got to be a better
If you want to see
airfield.
a picture, if you want to see a picture of what I was trying to show you, it's in the Discord on your DMs.
Oh, look at that. He's right. It was right there. Cool. That's actually pretty wild. And so with that, we're going to be getting back to our search for air bases, but Matthew actually just showed us something really cool. They call it a B-2 in flight. Let's see, Langley Air Force Base in Hampton, Virginia. So let's check this one out. I have low hopes. I'm expecting KC-135s. Oh, no, they got F-15s. The rare sight right there. They actually have something different. Cool. Nothing else. Wow. Hull Air Base, and on this image, you would expect... Wait a minute. Ooh, that's cool. F-5s.
Are those the... Oh, those F-5s?
I believe, or they may be T-38 Talons, which look a lot... Look very similar.
They look kind of like that NASA experimental plane a little bit.
Like these? Because this is it,
Somewhat.
right here. That's the exact one.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it right there. I believe those are used for training, if I'm correct. The T-38 Talons. We don't use them for anything beyond that. And also, they're just variations of the F-5, which we export a decent bit, and no longer, but we used to. Anyways, we need to stop this deep dive here into the air bases of America. Really cool, though. And I would continue, but I want to make sure we answer some more questions about Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we do have some more super chats to get to. So back to those. We have a $25 donation from George A, who says, "Trucking on, y'all, Iran."
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, George A. And we are going to be making sure that we truck it on, y'all, and Iran. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, George A, for the support and helping us to keep this thing running.
And yes, thank you very much for that, George. And up next, Walter A. Lakota Jr. He puts in a super chat and puts in a $20 donation and says, "Aloha, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun."
Hey!
Fun fact, the NS Savannah is the only nuclear ship built for merchant shipping. It does have a nuclear reactor. She had specific engineers to run the ship.
Thank you so much for the support, Walter A. Lakota. And let's check that out. The N/S Savannah. Nuclear ship in Baltimore. Let's check out the pictures. All right, all right. Pretty basic looking. Well, it's got a nice lounge in it, though. Oh, that looks like a torture chamber. that looks rough. But look, all the fine china on the ship has little atoms on it because it's nuclear. That's really neat. I'm guessing it's just a tourist attraction. Oh yeah, it's definitely a tourist attraction now with the state of the bridge. But that is really cool. That thing looks like it was a nuclear age ship, like with how it's like the bridge is designed and everything. Well, I guess you could say the
It really
superstructure.
does.
Like,
It has that kind of like retro look.
let's see here. It was ordered and it was launched. Its maiden voyage was in 1962, so it was definitely one of those kind of nuclear age ships. Man, that thing is just wild looking, actually. And what was it again? Sponsor completed, identification, status as a museum ship. That's weird. Like, you know, to make a nuclear powered merchant ship. That's super cool though. But it's still weird. And also the one thing that scares me about that, Walter, and I'm sure that you would agree with me, is that if wartime had ever begun in between the Soviet Union and the United States, or the Western NATO as a whole, imagine a Soviet submarine and a poorly trained skipper ordering torpedoes to fire on this thing, and the first one hits right on the engine bay of the reactor and just blows it open. Oh my lord! Imagine the radiation that would constantly be seeping from that thing forever. The sea, I would bet that the entire hemisphere that thing would be in would be contaminated with radioactive waste within decades. But that's an incredibly cool concept, and it's really neat to see that they even did that. I never even knew about it. And of course, we have to thank our LSA OG bosun for giving us this information. He is our fun fact man on both Hawaii and also merchant and maritime stuff. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address it fairly well, and we are on to the next one. Of course, everyone give a huge thanks to Walter E. Lakota for being a channel legend and helping us to keep this thing going. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, we have another super chat from Fuchsia Cone, who puts in a $5 donation once again and says, look at Fairchild Air Force Base near Spokane, Washington. You should see KC-135s and B-52s.
Fairchild?
Yeah, I think we just looked there, didn't we?
We did, actually. But we'll look at it again. And as he said before, KC-135s, nothing but KC-135s. Holy moly, that's a lot of KC-135s. I think there's one Stratotanker for every single fighter aircraft in the U.S. Air Force at this point, from what we can tell on Google Maps. Like, there's gotta be. Like, you know, like, it's like the United States, you know, this is the U.S.'s mindset, Matthew. Oh, you know, we need to attack an island in the middle of the Pacific, but none of our fighters have the range. That's okay, because we have 8 Stratotankers for every fighter. They can make it there and back. Like, that is
the American way.
Yeah, that's
why not just make an aircraft that can reach farther?
Nah, but I mean, do you know how big that would be? Like, that thing would be massive. Like, especially for a fighter aircraft, you would have to make like heavy fighters. Man, I mean, like, that would be expensive.
Just call it the Raptor XL.
Also, everyone's saying it's Spokane, not Spokane. I've never heard that before.
Spocken?
I've never heard Spocken. Spock, help me, Spock. But anyways, I'm sorry, everyone. It is Spokane. And also, man, you got a big kick out of that one.
Yes.
Anyways.
Do y'all remember that episode? That I think it's the original series.
It was let me explain to everyone. It's where the big rock, you know, like they beamed down to the planet because Abraham Lincoln was on it, and a big rock came out and he said, "We're going to watch the spectacle." And good versus evil had to fight, so they were fighting like people like Genghis Khan, which for some reason was the most evil person they could imagine. I mean, like, you know, there's so many people that they could have fit in there, like Stalin, Hitler, you know, anyone, but they picked Genghis Khan. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of evil people over there, and one of them was who was it? A Klingon? Like Kalis or something?
Think.
Yeah, so
something like that.
So anyways, Kalis captured Abraham Lincoln and tortured him to death. And so they went to save Lincoln, and then then Lincoln was dead, you know, anyways. And so next one was Sarek. No, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. They got Sarek of Vulcan. They captured him, they put him there, and then Abraham Lincoln went to go save him because they heard Sarek yelling out, "Spock, help me, Spock." And so they're like, oh my god, he's in pain, we must help him. And so they went over there, they found out it was fake. Abraham Lincoln got killed. Boo-hoo, you know. Second time's a charm, I guess. Anyways, it was hilarious because it sounded so fake. It was just like, "Spock, help me, Spock." And it was the funniest thing. Then afterwards, after they killed the guy, the Kalis guy was like, maybe I could do a good Abe Lincoln. Kirk, help me, Kirk. And he did the exact same thing, but just a little bit different. It was just funny to Matthew and me, and it's been a joke in our family ever since. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses why that was a funny thing to both Matthew and me fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
I don't think anybody else got it. But anyways, up next, we have a $2 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, did you know that KSC has dissected Saturn V display?
KSC? Kennedy Space.
Not KFC,
Kennedy,
KSC.
Kennedy Space Center. 1 second. Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy.
KFC's in the rocket business now.
Yeah.
Would you like that deep fried or not?
Do you like that deep fried, sir? Let's see if I can find the museum. The Center for Space Education. I think we spend more funding on the space education parts of the space program than the actual space program. Like, look at this place. They even have the Space Shuttle Atlantis in its own hangar. I don't know why, but for some reason my throat feels like really rough, and I don't know if it's reflecting my voice. It feels like it's a lot higher pitched than normal. And I know that's already grating to a lot of people how high pitch I get. And I feel like it's even worse tonight. But anyways, that's what. Oh, look, R2-D2s. Disney is coming with a cease and desist letter right now.
For the first time Disney's ever done anything without having to get paid for it.
No, I'm sure
I
they got
assume
paid
they didn't
for
get
that.
paid for
I'm
it.
sure they got paid for that. You know, like the government commissioned them to make some kind of films or something, and that was their payment. Also, look, it's the hippie van, but for NASA. I'm just kidding. That's one of the quarantine RVs, I believe, that they put the astronauts in because, you know, they didn't know if they were bringing back, like, deadly diseases. Also, look, they got the Challenger up there.
Oh.
You know, like you can't ever even say Challenger in the space program without being like, oh god, like that was horrendous. Anyways, that's a really cool hangar. We might have to go down there someday. But anyways, we need to find the Saturn V. Where in the world is the Saturn V? It will be at the Education Center, I guess. But I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's not down there. It's not Blue. Oh, Blue Origin. Come on, like that's not even a space program. That's just some guy launching phallic-looking objects slightly into a suborbital like apogee. Like that's not even. That's just stupid. I don't even know why they're here. I just roasted Jeff Bezos in like 20 seconds flat. But that is the dumbest thing ever. I cannot find the dissected Saturn V though. I take your word for it because they also have one in Huntsville, but I'm not seeing it here, and that's weird. Oh wait a minute. Oh no, that's not a Saturn V. That's a Saturn 1, I think. But I'm still not seeing it. Where is it? It's in Laval Cosmodrome. Laval Cosmodrome. No, I'm not seeing that. It's in Huntsville, but this is the Kennedy Space Center. It's in Huntsville. The one in Huntsville is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, the OG Space and Rocket Center. That's the one I think of, and we also have one up here. I will show this one because this one is pretty cool. Let's see here. Let me scroll down. You can also see some of the Army's neat innovations at this little space museum. And an SR-71. They just have it sitting up front. Why? I don't know. But they do. It's just like the weirdest part. You literally just drive by it when you're going there. But, oh gosh. That looks like a Russian Mi-17. And that's a museum piece in Huntsville. Goodness. Oh, here we go. Here's the dissected Saturn V in Huntsville, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. I couldn't find the one at Kennedy, however, but this one does exist, and I'm assuming that it would be very similar if we could find that one. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we were able to find one. I couldn't find the one at the Kennedy one, but we did find the one in Huntsville. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support and allowing this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have another super chat, this time from Fuchsia Cone, once again, who this time puts in a $50 donation and says, has the Enforce's rabbit hole shown that all of the United States strategic bombers are now forward deployed? They sure do not appear to be on our domestic basis. Russia beware, ? Launch tonight, ? Hee hee.
Tee-hee. And also the best the best way to answer that, Fushia Cone, because that is an interesting part of our rabbit holes. We haven't seen any bombers, is to go to Guam, because that will give us all the answers, right? 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 Oh, look, they've deployed the commercial airliners. I'm just kidding. We're actually going to go to the military base further north. So what do we got here? Holy moly! There's all the B-1 Lancers. That's where they are. Let's see what else they got here. God, they got a lot of pads. Look at that, man. Looks like a chess
Dang.
set.
That's
Jesus.
crazy.
You could operate the whole U.S. Air Force out of this one air base. What else they got down here? These aren't being used. They're using this one for storage. Well, we know where the B-1s are. At least we know that. They're all here. And we got...
What'd that say over there on the left? It said something crash site.
Gray Ghost Relic plane crash site. Wow, they just... A B-52 just crashed here and they left part of it.
They made like an exhibit out of it.
Yeah, that's cool. You actually see people standing around it. That's cool. I think that's just the tail section of it, too. But anyways, let's get back to looking at the airbase, because I just saw the Air Force's finest. God dang it, it's more KC-135s. I actually thought it was something different for a minute. I thought we were about to see something actually worthwhile, but nope, more KC-135s, some Black Hawks, and that's about it. They don't even have a lot here. They have some hardened shelters, though. We can't see what's in those. Probably just munitions. Dang, are you kidding me? Like, that's it. Wait a minute, hang on. There's another one. There's Okinawa. We need to go to Okinawa. That's what I'm thinking. Where's Okinawa? Right here. We need to go to Kadena. What do we got? Oh my god! More KC-135s! They gotta stop it with this. That's where the budget's going. It's going into these. We need to stop it, alright? I'm tired of it. I'm looking at the whole freaking world, and that's all we're seeing. More... Oh my god, it's AWACS versions of a 707. And I don't even know what the hell these are. Flying command centers? More of them! Oh my god, I'm gonna flip, Matthew. This is insane. There's nothing out there in the world but these. Okay, we found some C-130s. I'll give them that. But that's it. Another one. Okay, now we finally got some interesting stuff. We got some F-35s. We found the first F-35s worldwide. They're in Okinawa. And an F-15E, I think? I'm not sure on that one. It might be an F-15.
Those still look pretty cool.
Oh, I love the F-15s. I think they're great, but we haven't found any of them. Can anyone give us any idea of any British air bases? Because I'm sure there's a lot in Britain. Because we're finding nothing but KC-135s at normal air bases. And this is enough. I've had enough. Let's see. Barksdale. Someone said Barksdale. Maybe we can go there. Barksdale Air Force Base? Even something we can pull up? Come on, internet, work with me. Barksdale, where is this? This is in Louisiana. I'm not expecting much. Holy schmoly, we found them. We found B-52s finally. It's been like, what, an hour? We finally found them. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28? What the heck? Wait, we'll go back to that. 28, we got 28 right now. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. We got 35 B-52s at Barksdale, and how many are in service? How many B-52s are still flying? 58, so more than half of all of the B-52s in the country are right here at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. We actually got a lot for this, and what the hell? Did you see this, Matthew? Did you see the static displays? They got an Avro Vulcan. Where did they get that? Like, where the hell did you get one of those? Those are British bombers that were in service for ages, and they
those
just
are insanely loud, too.
Yeah, and they also sound so cool. They got this really neat howl that they make when they fly, and it sounds like some kind of a... What?
Oh, nothing. It was just a little bug. That scared the hell out of me. It just ran over my foot.
You sound like a villager on Minecraft, man. You went,
I about jumped out of my skin. Stupid bug. What the hell?
What kind of bug was it? I have a feeling I know what it was.
It might have been a cockroach.
A cockroach. But look at all these. Wow. we need to go here. They got B-47s, an SR-71, a P-51, a B-17, a B-24, a DC-3, an Electra, 2 Electras actually, really neat. F-111 Aardvark, a B-1 Lancer, 2 B-29s. You can't really tell a difference in between them, but I'm sure there is one. An Avro Vulcan, a MiG-21, 2 B-52s, and a freaking KC-135. It looks actually like a Boeing 707, but we'll count it as a KC-135. But we found them, finally. We found them. And honestly, I think Britain needs to come to aisle 7, Lost and Found, to get the Vulcan back, because I don't know how we got it, but apparently we have one. Maybe it went missing. I don't know. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next question. And we're going to answer questions until we reach the halfway point of this hour, which is 5 minutes. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another super chat, this time from Walter A. Lakota Jr. Once again, he puts in another $50 donation and says, me again. Tomorrow is December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. Fact, the IJN attacked Wheeler, Barbara Point, and Kaniho, a Marine base. A Zero crash on the island of Nihal west of Kauai, and another in Pearl City Heights. At Hickam Air Force Base, HQ has bullet holes.
And I thank you so much for the support, Walter A. Lakota. And also, it is going to be December 7th tomorrow, which is actually kind of crazy to think. It's December 7th again. And I seem to be the only person I ever know of that actually talks about December 7th whenever it comes around. And I feel like December 7th really is more important in a way than 9/11, because 9/11 is the one that's brought up a lot. But historically, Pearl Harbor, while 2,000 people were killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor, which is about the same as the World Trade Center, the attack on the World Trade Centers on 9/11, still, World War II would lead to about 500,000 Americans getting killed over the course of the next 4 years. And for that reason, I feel like Pearl Harbor doesn't really get the respect it deserves anymore around 70 to 80 years later for what it really was. It was the beginning of the largest war that we would ever fight, beyond the Civil War in terms of casualties. And I think it's really something worthwhile to talk about. I might try and make a video on this tomorrow. I don't know if people would enjoy watching it. Let me know if you would. I'm probably got like 4 videos lined up for tomorrow in terms of ideas, and I don't know if I can do them all, but it is a very interesting thing to talk about Pearl Harbor, and Hawaii actually still has a lot of the remnants of Pearl Harbor left over. Of course, the ships still lying at the bottom of Pearl Harbor itself are testament to what happened there. Not only that, but Pearl Harbor wasn't just, I guess you could say contained to Pearl Harbor alone. Some attacks did happen along the rest of the Hawaiian Islands, most specifically Oahu, and he brought up some very good points right there. It's a very good bits of history. So let's see if we can find some. Let's see. IGN attacked Wheeler Barbara Point. So let's find Wheeler Army Airfield in Hawaii. Right here, actually. We can see the airbase here. It still looks like it's actually used by the military. We can actually see what appears to be military housing here, which is really cool. And now they base Chinooks here, but at a time, I believe this was one of the airfields that would have had P-40 Warhawks at them. But I can't really say that for sure. But that's really cool. It's nothing but Chinooks. We actually found something different than a KC-135. And at Kaniho Marine Base. I know I mispronounced that one. It's spelled different, but Kanioki Marine Air Base. I'm sure if we go to the town, we'll find the air base. Oh, yeah, it'll be right out here. Yeah, it's right there. But let's see what we got out here. Oh, cool. We have Orions. That's neat. Also, they did attack this. I believe, if I remember correctly, a flight of B-17s was actually flying into this air station that day and were shot out of the sky by the Zeros coming in. And the radar installation that was on one of the heights in Oahu picked up the incoming Zeros, but actually thought it was the B-17s instead, which was a bit of a tragic bit of fate. But it wouldn't have even saved Hawaii, well, Pearl Harbor at that point, because there wasn't enough aircraft in Hawaii alone to counter the massive waves that were coming in. It may have helped a little, but it wouldn't have helped enough. But I guess something's better than nothing. But still, let's see. Let me actually pull up the Zero. I wonder if it's still there. So let's see here. Let's see if we can find any pictures of a down Zero that we could click on. No, we can't. This is actually a pretty good way from Oahu as well. I wonder if it crashed because of engine difficulties. I wouldn't really know for certain, but maybe it would have. This is well off the beaten path of any of the aircraft I would have remembered that would have been shot down during the battle. Not that I was there, but still, dang it, I can't drop down a picture there. But I thank you so much once again for the support, Walter A. Lakota, and also sharing that really cool history with us. And we may make a video on that tomorrow. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and being our Ellison OG bosun.
All right, and up next we have a $5 super chat from Zero J Kwan, who says, I was at Oahu over Thanksgiving. Check Wheeler Army Airfield, and tomorrow is December 7th, Pearl Harbor.
And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, we did check out Wheeler Army Airfield right here, which is no longer used the way it used to be in the 40s. It's now used for the Chinook, the venerable and fat and chunky Chinook. But still a really cool helicopter. I like it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and a big shout out to Texas T for putting in a $5 donation and sending in a super sticker of the YouTube dog thing, saying bravo and clapping. So thank you, Texas T, very much for that, and we do appreciate it very much. And I love that super sticker as well. And it looks like our last question of the night will be going to Anthony, who puts in a $2 donation and says Boise Air National Guard Base has plans.
That has plans. Boise.
For what?
That sounds ominous, actually. But let's find it. We found it. Oh, wow. That's just attached to the commercial airport. I was about to be like, oh my god. I was like, that's got a lot of infrastructure to it. But no, it's just because there's actual money involved over here on this side. But let's see what they got here. A-10s, nice. More A-10s, really nice. More A-10s, really nice. What do they got down here? Oh, look, man, these are the GTA private jet, the same colors and everything.
It sure is.
They got a whole bunch of commercial planes down here. Nothing military on this end of the ramp. And down here, they got nothing either. Wait a minute, nope. They got some Blackhawks. Lots and lots of Blackhawks. Pretty cool. And I don't know what you mean by they got plans, but I'll take your word on it. Just don't threaten us like that again, or else I'm gonna pull out the Tommy gun on you. And also, one other thing, since we're talking about National Guard air bases, let me show y'all Danley Field in Montgomery. Well, it's actually called the Montgomery Regional Airport, but it is the Danley Field as well. And what's cool about it is that they have Air National Guard F-16s. This is where the Tuskegee Airmen's, I guess you could say, unit still is. These are the Red Tails. You can actually see a little glimpse of a Red Tail right there, which is really cool that they are now in Montgomery. But with that, I hope we addressed that comment fairly well. And I thank you all so much once again for support. And that was actually the final question of the night. We didn't get to round it off on Super Chats, but we did answer all... Well, actually, we did round it out on Super Chats. We didn't round it out on live chats, but we did answer a whole load of them. And I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button and also share the stream with your friends, because it helps this channel to keep on growing, and it helps these live streams to keep on being watched by tens of thousands of people who enjoy this kind of news. I thank you all so much once again for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. Good night, take care, and I'll see you all then, and Slava Ukraini! Yeehaw!
Yes. The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу
свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького